Welcome, weary wanderer, to the extraordinary tale of Richard Buckley Watterson, a pink rabbit whose journey through life defies every conventional expectation. Tonight, we explore the complete story of a man who found greatness not through ambition or achievement, but through the simple, revolutionary act of being utterly, authentically himself. This is a story of suburban dreams and domestic chaos, of a father whose childlike wonder transformed an ordinary household into something magical. So settle in, get comfortable, and let your mind drift as we walk together through the gloriously imperfect world of Richard Watterson. Close your eyes when you're ready, and let's begin. In the quiet suburbs of Elmore, where cookie-cutter houses line streets that curve like gentle rivers through neighborhoods of modest dreams, there once lived a little pink rabbit, whose very existence seemed to defy the natural order of things. This was not the story of a hero born to greatness, nor the tale of a chosen one marked by destiny from his earliest breath. Instead, this was something far more remarkable and infinitely more rare, the chronicle of someone who would discover that the greatest magic in the world lay not in conquering kingdoms or commanding armies, but in the simple, revolutionary act of embracing joy, wherever it could be found. Richard Buckley Watterson entered the world on a day when spring rain drummed gently against hospital windows, as if the very sky was celebrating the arrival of someone who would spend his life finding wonder in the sound of precipitation against glass. His mother, Joanna, held him in those first precious moments with a mixture of overwhelming love and the quiet recognition that she was cradling something special. Not special in the way that parents often imagine their children are destined for fame or fortune, but special in a deeper, more fundamental sense that would take years to fully understand. From his earliest days in the small house on Watterson Lane, Richard displayed an uncanny ability to find contentment in circumstances that might have frustrated others. While other infants cried through the night, demanding attention and comfort, Richard seemed perfectly happy to lie in his crib, staring up at the ceiling with an expression of serene fascination, as if the play of shadows cast by passing clouds held secrets that only he could decipher. Joanna Watterson was a mother who understood that wisdom often comes disguised as simplicity, and she recognized in her son's peaceful demeanor something that transcended mere contentment. Here was a child who seemed to have been born with an innate understanding of what truly mattered in life, though it would take years for the rest of the world to catch up to his quiet revelations about the nature of happiness and fulfillment. As Richard grew from infant to toddler, his approach to the world around him began to reveal patterns that would define his entire existence. Where other children might throw tantrums when presented with vegetables they disliked, Richard approached every meal as an adventure in taste and texture, his eyes lighting up with genuine excitement at the prospect of discovering new flavors. His relationship with food was never merely about sustenance, but about the joy of experience, the pleasure of sharing meals with loved ones, and the simple satisfaction that came from appreciating life's most basic necessities. The Watterson household during Richard's early years was one of those rare homes where laughter echoed through every room, not because life was perfect, but because the family had learned to find humor and joy in imperfection itself. Joanna created an environment where her son's natural inclination toward happiness was nurtured and celebrated rather than corrected or redirected toward more conventional ambitions. Richard's first words were not the traditional mama or dada, but rather an expression of pure delight that sounded remarkably like wow, spoken with such genuine amazement that it seemed to encompass his entire philosophy of existence in a single syllable. This capacity for wonder would become his defining characteristic, the lens through which he would view every experience for the rest of his life. The neighborhood children were drawn to Richard with the kind of magnetic attraction that genuine kindness naturally creates. Even as a small child, he possessed an extraordinary ability to make others feel valued and accepted, never through grand gestures or impressive displays, but through the simple act of paying attention to them with complete, unguarded interest. When other children fell down and scraped their knees, Richard would be the first to offer comfort, not through medical expertise or practical solutions, but through the healing power of sincere empathy and often a joke that would turn tears into laughter. His relationship with television and popular culture began early, though it was characterized not by passive consumption, but by active engagement with the stories and characters that captured his imagination. Richard didn't simply watch cartoons. He entered into them with his entire being, laughing at the jokes, gasping at the plot twists, and discussing the characters as if they were personal friends whose adventures mattered as much as any real-world events. This deep engagement with media would later be dismissed by critics as laziness or escapism, but those who truly understood Richard recognized it as something far more sophisticated, a form of emotional intelligence that allowed him to extract genuine wisdom and life lessons from sources that others might consider trivial. Through Saturday morning cartoons, he learned about friendship, loyalty, and the importance of standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Through sitcoms, he discovered that families could love each other deeply while still driving each other completely crazy. Through adventure shows, he came to understand that real heroism often looked nothing like what people expected. Joanna watched her son's development with the kind of patient wisdom that comes from understanding that some flowers bloom according to their own internal schedule, rather than external expectations. While other parents pushed their children toward academic excellence or athletic achievement, she recognized that Richard's gifts lay in entirely different directions: in his ability to bring out the best in others, in his natural talent for diffusing conflicts through humor and perspective, and in his revolutionary understanding that success could be measured in terms of happiness and human connection rather than conventional accomplishment. The physical manifestation of Richard's character was as unique as his personality. Even as a young child, he possessed surprising strength and coordination, though he rarely displayed these abilities unless circumstances absolutely demanded it. He could climb trees with the agility of a natural athlete, run with surprising speed when chasing a ball or playing tag, and demonstrate reflexes that bordered on the supernatural when protecting someone he cared about from harm. Yet these physical gifts were always secondary to his emotional and social intelligence. Richard understood, with wisdom that seemed far beyond his years, that true strength lay not in overpowering others, but in lifting them up, not in winning competitions, but in ensuring that everyone had fun while playing, not in proving his superiority, but in celebrating the unique talents and perspectives that each person brought to any situation. His early friendships were characterized by an unusual depth and loyalty that often surprised adults who observed his interactions with other children. While playground dynamics typically involved complex hierarchies and shifting alliances, Richard seemed to exist outside these social structures entirely, treating every child he encountered as equally worthy of friendship and respect. He had a gift for remembering details about others that most people would forget: favorite colors, beloved pets, secret fears, and cherished dreams. And he used this knowledge not to manipulate or control, but to show genuine care and interest. The foundation of Richard's future parenting philosophy was being laid during these formative years through his observations of how adults interacted with children and with each other. He noticed that the grown-ups who seemed happiest were not necessarily those with the most money or the biggest houses, but rather those who took time to really listen when children spoke, who found reasons to laugh every day, and who treated ordinary moments as if they were special occasions. Joanna's approach to raising Richard was revolutionary in its simplicity. Rather than filling his schedule with structured activities and educational programs, she gave him the greatest gift a parent can offer: unstructured time to explore, to wonder, to make mistakes, and to discover his own interests and passions. Their backyard became a laboratory for curiosity, where Richard could spend hours observing insects, collecting interesting rocks, or simply lying on his back and watching clouds transform into fantastic shapes. These quiet moments of contemplation were not wasted time, but rather the crucible in which Richard's unique worldview was being forged. He learned that happiness was not something to be pursued, but something to be recognized in the present moment. He discovered that wisdom could come from the most unexpected sources, from the patient persistence of ants building their hills, from the way sunlight filtered through leaves, from the satisfying sound of his own laughter echoing off the walls of an empty room. The seeds of his future relationship with Nicole were planted during these early years, though neither of them could have imagined at the time how their paths would eventually intertwine. Richard was developing into someone who would naturally complement and balance a more intense, driven personality through his ability to remain calm in the face of chaos, to find humor in frustration, and to remind others that most of the things people worried about were far less important than the relationships they shared. As Richard prepared to enter the larger world beyond his childhood home, he carried with him not the conventional tools of success, ambition, competitiveness, or desire for recognition, but rather something far more valuable and infinitely more rare. He possessed an unshakable understanding that life was meant to be enjoyed, that people were more important than possessions, and that the greatest achievements were measured not in individual accomplishment, but in the happiness and well-being of those he loved. The little pink rabbit who had once stared at ceiling shadows with wonder was ready to discover that the entire world was full of equally fascinating mysteries, and that the key to unlocking them lay not in complex strategies or sophisticated knowledge, but in the simple act of approaching each day with an open heart and an eagerness to find something new to celebrate. The transition from childhood wonder to adolescent discovery is a journey that transforms even the most extraordinary individuals. And for Richard Watterson, the halls of Elmore High School became both theatre and classroom for lessons that would shape the rest of his existence. Here was a young pink rabbit who entered those corridors, not with the typical teenage anxieties about popularity or academic achievement, but with the same open-hearted curiosity that had characterized his earliest explorations of the world around him. Elmore High School in those days was much like any other suburban institution of learning, a collection of brick buildings and concrete walkways where young people gathered to absorb not only mathematics and literature, but also the complex social dynamics that would prepare them for adult life. Yet, for Richard, the school represented something different entirely. A vast laboratory of human behavior, where every interaction offered new insights into the mysterious workings of friendship, loyalty, and the endless variety of ways that people could surprise each other. His first day at the school was marked not by the nervous energy that typically accompanies such transitions, but by a sense of eager anticipation that seemed to radiate from him like warmth from a comfortable fire. While other freshmen clutched their schedules and maps with white-knuckled determination, Richard strolled through the unfamiliar hallways as if he were exploring a fascinating new continent, his eyes bright with interest at every discovery, the way morning light streamed through tall windows, the distinctive echo of voices in the gymnasium, the comforting smell of cafeteria food that would become one of his most cherished sensory memories. It was during these early weeks of high school that Richard's natural athletic abilities first became apparent to the wider world beyond his family and neighborhood friends. He had always possessed remarkable physical capabilities, but his gentle nature and preference for peaceful activities had meant that these talents remained largely hidden, like treasures buried beneath layers of contentment and philosophical contemplation. The revelation came during a mandatory physical education class, when students were being evaluated for potential participation in various sports programs. Richard approached the fitness tests with the same relaxed attitude he brought to everything else, treating each challenge not as a competition to be won, but as an interesting experiment in discovering what his body could accomplish when properly motivated. When he stepped up to the chin-up bar, expecting perhaps to manage the minimum requirements and then move on to more interesting activities, something remarkable happened. His body seemed to remember capabilities that his conscious mind had never fully acknowledged, and he found himself completing repetition after repetition with an ease that left his classmates and instructors staring in amazement. The same phenomenon occurred with every test. His running speed, his jumping ability, his coordination and reflexes all proved to be far beyond what anyone, including Richard himself, had anticipated. The basketball coach, a man named Coach Henderson who had spent decades identifying potential in young athletes, recognized immediately that he was witnessing something special. Richard's natural grace on the court, his ability to read the flow of the game, and his surprising vertical leap made him a formidable player despite his complete lack of formal training or competitive experience. Yet what truly set Richard apart from other talented athletes was his approach to the game itself. Where most players focused intensely on winning, on outperforming their opponents, and on showcasing their individual skills, Richard played with a joy and inclusiveness that transformed every practice session into something approaching a celebration. He celebrated his teammates' successes as enthusiastically as his own, offered encouragement to struggling players without a trace of condescension, and found ways to make even the most grueling training exercises feel like elaborate games rather than work. His signature move, a spinning layup that seemed to defy several laws of physics, became legendary, not just for its effectiveness, but for the pure delight that Richard displayed every time he executed it. The move wasn't calculated or rehearsed. It emerged naturally from his instinctive understanding of movement and space, as if his body knew secrets about basketball that coaches had never thought to teach. The success on the basketball court brought Richard a level of recognition and social status that many teenagers would have embraced wholeheartedly, but he remained remarkably unchanged by the attention. He was friendly and approachable with everyone who sought him out, but he never allowed his athletic achievements to create barriers between himself and students who weren't part of the sports community. His lunch table became a gathering place for an unusually diverse group of friends: athletes and artists, honor students and class clowns, popular kids, and those who typically ate alone. It was at this lunch table, during his sophomore year, that Richard first noticed a small blue cat with fierce orange eyes who seemed to carry the weight of the entire world on her narrow shoulders. Nicole Watterson, though she wouldn't bear that surname for many years, yet was new to Elmore High, having transferred from a more academically rigorous school, where competition had been the primary mode of student interaction. Nicole's reputation had preceded her arrival, whispered stories of academic excellence and competitive achievements that had made her something of a legend before she ever set foot in the building. Teachers spoke of her in hushed, reverent tones, describing test scores and project presentations that bordered on the supernatural. Other students regarded her with a mixture of admiration and intimidation, recognizing in her the kind of focused intensity that most of them could only dream of achieving. Yet when Richard first saw Nicole, sitting alone at a corner table with her perfectly organized lunch and a stack of textbooks that suggested she intended to use the meal period for additional studying, What struck him was not her fearsome reputation, but the profound loneliness that seemed to surround her like a visible aura. Here was someone who had achieved everything that society told young people they should want: excellent grades, teacher approval, clear direction toward future success, but who looked as if she carried the weight of those achievements like chains rather than badges of honor. Their first interaction was quintessentially Richard in its simplicity and directness. Rather than being intimidated by her reputation or attempting to impress her with his own athletic achievements, he simply walked over to her table during lunch one day, carrying his tray of cafeteria food, and asked if he could sit down. The question was asked without any underlying agenda, without romantic intention or social strategy, but simply because he had noticed that she was alone, and his natural instinct was to offer companionship to anyone who seemed to need it. Nicole's initial response was defensive, a sharp inquiry about what he wanted, and a clear indication that she was perfectly capable of eating lunch by herself, without requiring assistance from anyone. "Thank you very much." But Richard's reaction to this defensive posture was characteristic of his approach to all human interaction. He simply smiled, acknowledged that she was indeed capable of independent lunch consumption, and then proceeded to enjoy his meal while making casual observations about the day's events that required no response from her but invited participation if she felt so inclined. The genius of Richard's social approach lay in his complete absence of pressure or expectation. He never demanded that people respond to his overtures of friendship, never seemed hurt or offended when his attempts at conversation were rebuffed, and never treated social interaction as a transaction where kindness was offered in exchange for some expected return. This made him virtually impossible to resist, because people instinctively recognized that his interest in them was genuine and unconditional. Over the weeks that followed, Nicole found herself looking forward to their lunchtime conversations, despite her initial determination to maintain her solitary focus on academic excellence. Richard's perspective on school, on life, and on the various dramas that consumed their classmates was unlike anything she had encountered before. Where she saw competition and hierarchies, he saw opportunities for cooperation and friendship. Where she felt pressure to perform and achieve, he found reasons to celebrate small victories and learn from interesting failures. His academic performance was a source of continuous fascination to Nicole, who couldn't understand how someone so obviously intelligent could seem so completely unconcerned with grades or teacher approval. Richard approached his classes with the same open curiosity he brought to everything else, genuinely interested in learning new things, but utterly untroubled by the prospect of not being the best student in the room. When he struggled with mathematics, which happened frequently due to his tendency to approach problems through intuitive rather than methodical reasoning, he would ask for help without embarrassment or shame. When he excelled in English literature, finding connections between classic works and his beloved television shows that amazed his teachers, he would share his insights enthusiastically, without any sense of superiority over classmates who found the material more challenging. This combination of intellectual curiosity and emotional security was revolutionary to Nicole, who had spent years believing that academic achievement was a constant battle where any sign of weakness or confusion represented failure. Richard's ability to learn joyfully, to make mistakes without self-recrimination, and to celebrate knowledge for its own sake, rather than for the grades it might produce, opened her eyes to an entirely different way of approaching education and personal growth. Their friendship deepened gradually, built on countless small moments of understanding and shared discovery. Richard introduced Nicole to the pleasure of truly appreciating cafeteria food, teaching her to find genuine enjoyment in simple meals, rather than treating eating as merely a necessary interruption to more important activities. She, in turn, helped him develop more effective study habits though she gradually learned that his seemingly chaotic approach to learning often produced insights that her more structured methods couldn't achieve. The relationship between Richard's natural talents and his philosophical approach to life became increasingly apparent as their friendship developed. His success on the basketball team was never about proving his superiority over opponents or gaining recognition for his abilities, but rather about the pure joy of movement, the satisfaction of working effectively with teammates, and the pleasure of participating in something larger than himself. When college scouts began attending games specifically to evaluate Richard's potential, he treated their interest with the same bemused good humor he brought to all external validation. The attention was flattering, certainly, but it didn't change his fundamental understanding of what made basketball enjoyable or worthwhile. He played with the same enthusiasm and inclusiveness, whether the stands were empty or filled with recruiters taking notes. Nicole watched this process with growing amazement and, if she was honest with herself, growing attraction to someone who seemed to have solved problems that she hadn't even realized were problems. Richard's contentment was not the result of low expectations or limited ambition, but rather of a profound understanding of what actually mattered in life. His happiness came from relationships, from simple pleasures, from the satisfaction of being genuinely helpful to others, and from an appreciation of beauty and humor that could find expression in the most ordinary circumstances. The internal conflict that Richard experienced during his high school years was not the typical adolescent struggle between childhood and adulthood, but rather a more subtle tension between the conventional path that his talents seemed to be opening for him and his instinctive understanding of what would actually make him happy. College recruiters spoke to him about athletic scholarships, about the possibilities of professional sports careers, about the fame and fortune that could come from fully developing his remarkable physical abilities. Yet even as he listened politely to these presentations and considered the opportunities they represented, Richard felt a growing certainty that conventional success would not provide the fulfillment that these well-meaning adults promised. His happiness came not from individual achievement but from shared experiences, not from competition but from cooperation, not from being exceptional but from helping others recognize their own exceptional qualities. The choice he faced was not simply between different career paths but between different philosophies of existence. He could pursue the athletic excellence that seemed within his grasp, could develop his talents to their fullest potential, and enjoy all the recognition and rewards that society offered to successful athletes. Or he could follow his deeper understanding of what made life meaningful, even if that path led away from conventional measures of success and towards something that others might not fully understand or appreciate. Nicole's influence on this decision-making process was profound, though not in the way that either of them initially expected. Her own struggles with the pressure to achieve, to constantly prove her worth through academic performance, and to sacrifice present happiness for future success, provided Richard with a clear example of where the conventional path ultimately led. Despite her impressive accomplishments, Nicole was often stressed, rarely truly relaxed, and seemed to carry a constant burden of anxiety about whether she was doing enough, achieving enough, being enough. Richard's natural response to Nicole's stress was not to encourage her to work harder or achieve more, but rather to help her discover the simple pleasures and genuine satisfactions that she had been overlooking in her relentless pursuit of excellence. Their study sessions became opportunities for laughter and connection as much as academic achievement. Their conversations revealed to both of them that the most meaningful moments in life were often the smallest ones: shared jokes, comfortable silences, the satisfaction of understanding something new together. As his high school career drew toward its conclusion, Richard found himself at peace with the choice that had gradually crystallized in his mind. He would not pursue the athletic scholarships or the professional opportunities that his talents could have secured. Instead, he would follow the path that led toward the kind of life he actually wanted, one filled with meaningful relationships, simple pleasures, and the deep satisfaction that came from being authentically himself rather than living up to others' expectations of what he should become. The decision disappointed some of his teachers and coaches, who had invested considerable time and energy in developing his abilities and had hoped to see those investments pay off in conventional terms. But those who truly knew Richard understood that his choice was not a rejection of his talents, but rather an expression of wisdom that most people took decades to acquire. He had learned, through observation and experience, that happiness was not something to be achieved in the future through hard work and sacrifice, but rather something to be recognized and cultivated in the present through gratitude, connection, and the willingness to find joy in ordinary circumstances. This understanding would guide every major decision he made for the rest of his life, from his approach to relationships and family, to his choice of how to spend his days and what to value most deeply. The pink rabbit who walked across the stage to receive his high school diploma was not the same individual who had entered those halls 4 years earlier, though the changes were more internal than external. He had discovered not just his physical capabilities, but also his emotional and philosophical strengths. He had learned to navigate complex social dynamics while maintaining his essential kindness and authenticity. Most importantly, he had begun to understand that his greatest gift to the world would not be his athletic prowess or his natural abilities, but rather his capacity to help others find happiness and meaning in their own lives. As he prepared to leave Elmore High School behind and enter the next phase of his journey, Richard carried with him not just a diploma and a collection of memories, but a fully formed philosophy of life that would serve him well in all the adventures and challenges that lay ahead. He had learned that true strength lay not in overpowering others, but in lifting them up. That genuine success was measured not in individual achievement, but in the happiness and well-being of those he cared about, and that the greatest wisdom often came disguised as the simplest insights about what really mattered in this brief and precious existence. The transformation of friendship into something deeper and more profound is one of life's most mysterious and beautiful processes, and for Richard Watterson and Nicole, this metamorphosis unfolded with the gentle inevitability of seasons changing, each small moment building upon the last until what had begun as casual companionship had become something that neither of them could imagine living without. Their relationship during the final months of high school had evolved into a partnership that complemented their individual strengths in ways that seemed almost divinely orchestrated. Where Nicole's intensity and drive might have burned too brightly without moderation, Richard's calm presence provided a steady anchor that allowed her to channel her energy more effectively. Where Richard's natural contentment might have led to complacency without challenge, Nicole's ambition and vision inspired him to engage more fully with the world around them, while never losing sight of what truly mattered. The transition from high school to the wider world brought with it questions and decisions that tested the foundation of their connection in ways that neither had anticipated. College acceptance letters arrived, carrying opportunities that could have taken them in entirely different directions, toward futures that might never have intersected again. Nicole's academic achievements had earned her acceptance to prestigious universities, with rigorous programs designed to fast-track her toward professional success and financial security. Richard's athletic abilities, despite his lack of interest in pursuing them professionally, had generated scholarship offers from schools eager to add his talents to their sports programs. Yet, When they sat together in the quiet sanctuary of their favorite study spot in the school library, surrounded by the books and silence that had witnessed so many of their conversations, they found themselves discussing these opportunities not as individual choices, but as decisions that would affect both of their futures. The conversation was not marked by dramatic declarations of love or desperate pleas for commitment, but rather by the kind of thoughtful consideration that mature people bring to life's most important decisions. Richard's approach to the question of their future was characteristically straightforward and unencumbered by conventional expectations. He had no interest in the athletic scholarships that others considered golden opportunities, and he felt no pressure to pursue higher education simply because it was what ambitious young people were expected to do. His vision of happiness did not require the validation of academic degrees or professional achievements, but it absolutely required the presence of the person who had become essential to his understanding of what made life meaningful. Nicole's perspective was more complex, shaped as it was by years of conditioning that equated success with continuous achievement and upward mobility. Part of her felt obligated to accept the most challenging academic program available, to push herself toward ever greater heights of accomplishment, regardless of the personal cost. Yet another part of her, a part that had grown stronger through her friendship with Richard, recognized that all of her achievements would feel hollow if they came at the expense of the relationship that had taught her what genuine happiness actually felt like. The decision they reached was not the result of compromise or sacrifice, but rather of a shared recognition that their best future lay not in pursuing individual ambitions separately, but in building something together that would be greater than either could achieve alone. They chose to remain in Elmore, enrolling in the local community college where they could continue their education, while exploring what their relationship might become when freed from the artificial constraints of high school social dynamics. Their early dating period was marked by the same easy companionship that had characterized their friendship, but deepened by a growing awareness of the physical and emotional attraction that had been building between them for months. Richard's approach to romance was as unconventional as everything else about him. He courted Nicole not with expensive gifts or elaborate gestures, but with the kind of thoughtful attention to her needs and preferences that demonstrated how carefully he had been observing and cherishing her all along. He remembered that she became anxious when her study schedule was disrupted, so he planned their dates around her academic commitments rather than expecting her to rearrange her priorities for him. He noticed that she relaxed most completely when engaged in activities that had nothing to do with competition or achievement, so their time together often involved simple pleasures like walking through parks, sharing meals at inexpensive restaurants, or watching movies that required no analysis or critical thinking. Nicole's approach to their romantic relationship was initially hampered by her tendency to overthink and strategize, to treat even love as another challenge to be mastered through careful planning and flawless execution. Yet Richard's influence gradually taught her that the most meaningful aspects of their connection couldn't be controlled or optimized, but only experienced with open-hearted presence and trust. Their first apartment together was a tiny space above a bakery in downtown Elmore, with thin walls that carried the sounds of their neighbors and a kitchen so small that only one person could cook at a time without creating chaos. Yet for both of them, this modest dwelling represented a kind of paradise, not because of its physical attributes, which were admittedly limited, but because it was theirs, a space where they could begin to build the life they had envisioned together. Richard's approach to domestic life was a revelation to Nicole, who had grown up in a household where chores were obligations to be completed efficiently and living spaces were maintained according to rigid standards of order and cleanliness. In Richard's hands, the mundane tasks of daily life became opportunities for connection and even joy. Grocery shopping, became an adventure in discovering new foods to try together. Cooking became a collaborative art form where mistakes were laughed about rather than lamented. Even cleaning became more bearable when accompanied by Richard's running commentary and occasional impromptu dance performances with the vacuum cleaner. The financial realities of young adult life might have been stressful for a couple focused primarily on material security and conventional measures of success. Their combined income from part-time jobs barely covered rent and basic necessities, leaving little room for the luxuries that many of their peers seemed to consider essential. Yet, Richard's philosophy regarding money and possessions provided a framework for contentment that transformed potential hardship into an opportunity for creativity and closer connection. He had learned from childhood that happiness was not purchased but created, not accumulated but shared. Their entertainment budget consisted primarily of the cost of renting movies from the local video store, but their weekly movie nights became events they both looked forward to with genuine excitement. Their dining out was limited to occasional visits to inexpensive restaurants, but these meals felt special because they were shared with appreciation and gratitude rather than taken for granted. Richard's natural talent for finding free or low-cost activities meant that they rarely felt deprived despite their limited resources. He discovered hiking trails that provided hours of beautiful scenery and peaceful conversation. He found community events and festivals that offered entertainment and social connection without admission fees. He created indoor adventures that transformed their tiny apartment into venues for games, storytelling sessions, and dance parties that required nothing more than imagination and willingness to be playful. Nicole's initial adjustment to this lifestyle required a significant shift in perspective, as she had been conditioned to equate financial success with personal worth, and to view frugality as a temporary inconvenience to be endured until better opportunities arose. Yet Richard's example gradually taught her that their current circumstances were not obstacles to happiness, but rather opportunities to discover what they truly valued and needed. She began to understand that the stress she had always associated with money came not from having too little, but from wanting too much. Not from genuine need, but from artificial expectations about what constituted an acceptable standard of living. Richard's contentment with their modest means was not the result of low standards or limited ambition, but rather of a profound understanding that security and satisfaction came from relationships and experiences rather than possessions and status symbols. The daily rhythms of their shared life took on a quality that was both routine and magical, structured enough to provide stability and comfort, but flexible enough to accommodate spontaneity and surprise. Richard's natural inclination to find joy in ordinary moments meant that even their most mundane activities carried the potential for laughter and connection. Their morning routine involved the kind of gentle negotiation that couples learn when sharing limited space and resources. Richard's tendency to wake up immediately cheerful and talkative balanced Nicole's need for gradual emergence into consciousness through the mediation of carefully prepared coffee and quiet contemplation. Their breakfast conversations became opportunities to plan the day ahead, to share dreams from the previous night, and to remind each other of upcoming obligations and anticipated pleasures. Richard's approach to Nicole's academic stress during this period demonstrated the depth of his emotional intelligence and his growing understanding of how to support someone he loved without trying to fix or change them. When she became overwhelmed by coursework or frustrated by professors who seemed to demand impossible standards, he didn't offer solutions or advice unless specifically asked. Instead, he provided the kind of steady presence and unconditional acceptance that allowed her to process her emotions and find her own way forward. His interventions were subtle but effective, appearing with her favorite tea when she had been studying for hours without a break, suggesting gentle walks when her anxiety levels seemed to be climbing toward dangerous territory, creating reasons for laughter when she became so focused on problems that she lost sight of perspective. He never minimized her concerns or suggested that she was overreacting, but he also never allowed her stress to consume their entire relationship or transform their home into an extension of academic pressure. Nicole's influence on Richard during this period was equally profound, though perhaps less immediately visible. Her drive and ambition challenged him to engage more fully with his own potential, not by pursuing conventional success, but by finding ways to contribute meaningfully to their shared future. She encouraged him to explore interests and talents that he might have dismissed as impractical or unrealistic, helping him recognize that his natural gifts for connecting with people and finding creative solutions to problems were valuable skills that could be developed and applied in various contexts. Their discussions about the future became more concrete and collaborative as their relationship deepened and their understanding of each other's dreams and values became more complete. Richard's vision of happiness remained centered on family and relationships, but Nicole's influence helped him articulate more specific ideas about how he wanted to contribute to the world and what kind of legacy he hoped to leave. The proposal, when it finally came, was quintessentially Richard in its simplicity and sincerity. There were no elaborate schemes or public spectacles, no expensive rings or carefully choreographed moments designed to create perfect memories. Instead, there was just an ordinary evening in their tiny apartment, Nicole studying at their small kitchen table while Richard prepared dinner, when he suddenly realized with complete clarity that he wanted to spend every remaining day of his life creating these simple, perfect moments with her. The question was asked without fanfare or preparation, emerging naturally from a conversation about their weekend plans, as if it were the most logical progression in the world. Richard's certainty about wanting to marry Nicole was absolute and uncomplicated, based not on romantic idealization or social expectations, but on the deep satisfaction he felt in building a life with someone who understood and appreciated him exactly as he was. Nicole's response was immediate and joyful, despite her usual tendency to analyze and consider all angles before making important decisions. The months of living together had demonstrated to both of them that their compatibility extended beyond friendship and romantic attraction into the practical realities of daily life. They had learned to navigate disagreements without damaging their fundamental connection, to support each other's individual goals while building shared dreams, and to find happiness in circumstances that others might consider challenging or insufficient. The wedding planning process revealed new dimensions of their partnership as they worked together to create a celebration that reflected their values and priorities rather than conforming to external expectations about what such events should include. Richard's preference for simplicity and focus on the essential meaning of the ceremony balanced Nicole's attention to detail and desire to ensure that their important day was properly planned and executed. Their small ceremony was held in the community center, where they had first attended college classes together, surrounded by family and friends who had witnessed the development of their relationship from its earliest stages. The venue was not grand or elegant in conventional terms, but it was filled with the warmth and genuine affection of people who understood and celebrated what Richard and Nicole had found together. The vows they exchanged were written individually, but reflected the same understanding of what marriage meant to them. Not a culmination or achievement to be celebrated and then maintained through duty and obligation, but rather the beginning of an adventure that would require daily choice and commitment, ongoing growth and discovery, and the willingness to continue choosing each other through whatever changes and challenges the future might bring. Richard's vows reflected his natural poetry and his deep appreciation for the ways that Nicole had enhanced and enriched his understanding of what life could offer. He spoke of her courage in pursuing her dreams despite obstacles and setbacks, her generosity in sharing her knowledge and insights with him, and her willingness to build something new and wonderful together, rather than simply following predetermined paths toward conventional success. Nicole's vows revealed the profound impact that Richard's approach to life had made on her own understanding of what mattered most. She spoke of his gift for finding joy in ordinary moments, his ability to remain calm and centered during difficult times, and his talent for making everyone around him feel valued and appreciated. She acknowledged that he had taught her lessons about happiness and fulfillment that no textbook or teacher had ever been able to convey. The early months of their marriage were a continuation and deepening of the patterns they had established while living together, but with an added sense of permanence and commitment that affected both of them in subtle but significant ways. Their tiny apartment felt different now that they inhabited it not just as boyfriend and girlfriend experimenting with domestic partnership, but as husband and wife building the foundation of a lifetime together. Richard's approach to marriage was characterized by the same thoughtful attention to Nicole's needs and preferences that had marked their courtship, but deepened by his growing understanding of how to love someone, not just in moments of happiness and compatibility, but also during times of stress, disagreement, and individual struggle. He learned to read the subtle signs that indicated when Nicole needed space to work through problems independently, and when she needed his active support and encouragement. The wisdom that Richard brought to their marriage was not the result of extensive study or expert advice, but rather of careful observation and genuine care for Nicole's well-being and happiness. He understood intuitively that love was not a feeling to be maintained, but an action to be practiced. Not a state of constant harmony, but a commitment to working through discord and difficulty together. Their relationship during this foundational period established patterns and principles that would guide them through all the adventures and challenges that lay ahead, the arrival of children who would transform their quiet partnership into something larger and more complex. The financial pressures and career decisions that would test their values and priorities, and the countless small moments of joy and struggle that would weave together into the rich tapestry of their shared life. As they settled into the rhythm of married life, Richard and Nicole had created something remarkable, not perfect, because perfection was neither possible nor desirable, but genuine and sustainable and deeply satisfying to both of them. They had built a relationship based on mutual respect and appreciation, on shared values and complementary strengths, and on the understanding that their greatest happiness would always come not from individual achievement, but from what they could create and experience together. The pink rabbit, who had once been content to find wonder in sealing shadows, had discovered that the greatest wonder of all was sharing life with someone who understood and cherished him exactly as he was, while inspiring him to become the best possible version of himself, not through pressure or criticism, but through love and acceptance, and the simple example of her own courage and determination. The announcement that their family would soon expand from 2 to 3 brought with it a cascade of emotions and realizations that transformed Richard and Nicole's understanding of themselves and their relationship in ways that neither had fully anticipated. The news arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning in their tiny apartment, carried by a small plastic indicator that would forever divide their lives into the time before they knew they were going to be parents, and the time after that. Knowledge became the organizing principle around which all their other thoughts and plans would revolve. Richard's initial reaction to the confirmation of Nicole's pregnancy was a moment of pure, overwhelming joy that seemed to start somewhere deep in his chest and radiate outward until it encompassed his entire being. This was not the calculated happiness of someone achieving a planned milestone or checking an item off a life goals list, but rather the spontaneous eruption of delight that comes from discovering that the universe has gifted you with something you didn't even realize you had been hoping for. The image that flashed through his mind in that first moment was not of cribs or college funds or any of the practical considerations that would soon demand their attention, but rather of himself as a child, lying on his back in his mother's garden and staring up at clouds while she worked nearby, humming softly to herself. He saw himself sharing that same simple pleasure with a small person who would carry his genes and Nicole's intelligence, who would see the world through eyes that had never learned to dismiss wonder as childish or impractical. Nicole's response was more complex, layered with the same joy that Richard felt, but complicated by her natural tendency to immediately begin cataloguing all the challenges and responsibilities that lay ahead. Her mind raced through calculations about their finances, their living space, their individual career plans, and the 1,000 practical details that would need to be addressed before they could provide a proper home for a child. Yet beneath the surface anxiety and planning instincts, Nicole felt a profound sense of rightness about the timing and circumstances of this pregnancy. Despite their modest means and uncertain future, despite the fact that this development had not been carefully scheduled and prepared for according to any rational plan, she recognized with absolute certainty that she could not imagine a better partner with whom to embark on the adventure of parenthood. Richard's approach to pregnancy was characteristically focused on the present moment rather than distant future concerns. While Nicole researched childcare costs and developmental milestones, Richard concentrated on the immediate reality of supporting his wife through the physical and emotional changes that pregnancy brought with it. He attended every doctor's appointment with the kind of focused attention that most people reserved for critical business meetings, asking questions that revealed his genuine fascination with the process of human development and his determination to understand everything possible about what Nicole was experiencing. His natural talent for providing comfort and care found new expression in the countless small gestures that made Nicole's pregnancy more manageable and enjoyable. He learned to recognize the subtle signs that indicated when she needed extra rest, when morning sickness was about to strike, or when the emotional intensity of carrying a child was becoming overwhelming. His responses to these needs were never dramatic or attention-seeking, but rather quietly effective, a cup of ginger tea appearing at exactly the right moment, a gentle back rub offered without being asked, or simply his steady presence during times when hormonal changes made the world feel unstable and unpredictable. The transformation of their tiny apartment from a space designed for 2 adults into a home suitable for a family required creative solutions that played to both of their strengths. Nicole's organizational skills and attention to detail ensured that every square inch of available space was utilized efficiently, while Richard's natural optimism and ability to find beauty in simple things helped them create an environment that felt welcoming and cheerful despite its physical limitations. Their approach to preparing for the baby reflected the complementary nature of their partnership in ways that would become even more pronounced once they became parents. Nicole focused on the practical necessities, researching the safest car seats, comparing prices on essential items, and creating detailed budgets that would allow them to provide everything their child would need without falling into financial hardship. Richard concentrated on the emotional and psychological preparation, reading not about feeding schedules and sleep training, but about child development, attachment theory, and the importance of play in helping children understand their world. The conversations they had during those months of anticipation revealed new depths to both of their characters and new dimensions of their love for each other. Richard's excitement about becoming a father was infectious and genuine, untainted by anxiety about whether he would be adequate to the task or competitive concern about being the kind of parent that others would admire. His confidence came not from any previous experience with children, but from his absolute certainty that love was the most important ingredient in successful parenting, and love was something he had in abundant supply. Nicole's approach to impending motherhood was more analytical but equally heartfelt. She studied parenting books with the same intensity she had once brought to academic subjects. But her motivation was not to achieve perfect grades or impressive performance ratings. Instead, she was driven by a fierce determination to give their child every possible advantage and opportunity, to avoid the mistakes that could damage a young person's development, and to create the kind of nurturing environment where her child could grow into the best possible version of themselves. The physical changes of pregnancy fascinated Richard in ways that surprised both of them. He approached Nicole's changing body, not with the detached interest of someone observing a biological process, but with the wonder of someone witnessing a daily miracle. His reverence for what her body was accomplishing, his genuine amazement at the complexity and sophistication of human development, and his ability to find beauty in every stage of the pregnancy helped Nicole maintain a positive relationship with the physical challenges of carrying a child. When morning sickness made eating difficult, Richard responded not with frustration or inconvenience, but with patient experimentation to find foods and preparation methods that Nicole could tolerate. When back pain made sleeping uncomfortable, he researched ergonomic solutions and spent hours arranging pillows and cushions to provide relief. When hormonal changes caused emotional volatility, he provided steady reassurance without ever suggesting that her feelings were unreasonable or temporary inconveniences to be endured. The anticipation of their child's arrival created a new kind of intimacy between Richard and Nicole, one that encompassed not just their love for each other, but their shared excitement about the person they were about to meet. They spent hours speculating about what their child might look like, what personality traits might emerge, and what talents or interests might develop. These conversations were never prescriptive or demanding, but rather filled with the kind of open curiosity that would characterize Richard's approach to parenting throughout his life. Richard's natural talent for storytelling found new expression as he began creating bedtime stories for their unborn child, speaking softly to Nicole's growing belly with tales of adventure and friendship that established the foundation for a lifetime of imaginative play and creative thinking. These stories were not carefully crafted moral lessons or educational tools, but rather spontaneous expressions of his own playful nature and his eagerness to share with his child the wonder and possibility that he saw in everyday life. The arrival of labor brought with it a test of Richard's ability to remain calm and supportive during circumstances that were beyond his control or understanding. The hours they spent at the hospital were filled with the kind of intensity that strips away all pretense and reveals people's essential character. And Richard's response to Nicole's pain and effort demonstrated the depth of his love and the strength of his commitment to their partnership. He never tried to minimize her discomfort or rush her through the process, never expressed frustration with the unpredictable timing or the disruption to their normal routine. Instead, he remained focused entirely on providing whatever support and encouragement she needed, whether that meant holding her hand through contractions, advocating for her needs with medical staff, or simply being present with complete attention and unwavering faith in her strength and capability. When Gumball Watterson finally made his appearance in the world, Richard's first glimpse of his son produced a reaction that was both completely expected and utterly surprising. The joy he felt was so intense and overwhelming that it seemed to exist in a category beyond normal human emotion, a combination of love and wonder and protective instinct that redefined his understanding of what it meant to care about another person. The tiny blue kitten who lay wrinkled and crying in the delivery room bore little resemblance to the idealized babies that appeared in advertisements and greeting cards. Yet to Richard, he was the most beautiful and perfect creature that had ever existed. The immediate bond he felt with his son was not based on physical appearance or impressive abilities, but rather on the simple, profound fact that this small person was his responsibility and privilege to love and protect and guide through all the adventures and challenges that lay ahead. The first nights at home with their newborn tested every assumption Richard and Nicole had made about their readiness for parenthood. The reality of caring for an infant proved to be simultaneously more demanding and more rewarding than either of them had imagined. Sleep became a precious commodity to be carefully rationed. Meals were consumed hastily while standing in the kitchen, and conversations were interrupted by cries that demanded immediate attention, regardless of what other activities might be taking place. Yet Richard approached these challenges with the same philosophical acceptance that he brought to all of life's complications. The exhaustion was real and sometimes overwhelming, but it was also temporary and purposeful. The disruption to their previous routine was significant, but it was also the natural consequence of welcoming a new family member who would gradually learn to accommodate their needs, just as they were learning to accommodate his. Richard's natural talent for finding joy in simple moments proved invaluable during those early weeks of adjustment. When Gumball fell asleep in his arms after a feeding, Richard would sit quietly for long minutes, marveling at the perfect tiny features and the miracle of new life. When the baby's first smiles appeared, Richard celebrated them as if they were major achievements worthy of national recognition. When Gumball began to recognize his voice and respond to his presence, Richard felt a satisfaction that surpassed any recognition or accomplishment from his previous life. The division of labor that emerged naturally between Richard and Nicole reflected their individual strengths and preferences in ways that benefited both of them and their son. Nicole's efficiency and organizational skills made her naturally suited to managing the practical aspects of infant care tracking, feeding schedules, monitoring developmental milestones, and coordinating medical appointments. Richard's patience and intuitive understanding of emotional needs made him the family expert on comfort and play, the one who could soothe a crying baby or create entertainment from simple household objects. This complementary approach to parenting established patterns that would continue throughout Gumball's childhood and beyond. Neither parent tried to be everything to their child or to compete with the other for primacy in their son's affections. Instead, they created a unified but varied parenting team where Gumball could receive different kinds of support and guidance depending on his particular needs at any given moment. Richard's instinctive understanding of how to communicate with children was apparent from the earliest stages of Gumball's development. He spoke to his son, not in the simplified baby talk that many adults use with infants, but in the same conversational tone he used with everyone else, treating Gumball as a person whose intelligence and personality deserved respect even before they were fully developed. This approach helped establish a foundation of mutual respect and open communication that would characterize their relationship throughout Gumball's childhood and adolescence. The games and activities that Richard created for his son were extensions of his own playful nature and his understanding that learning happens most effectively when it feels like fun rather than work. Simple household objects became toys, everyday routines became opportunities for songs and stories, and ordinary moments were transformed into adventures through the application of imagination and enthusiasm. Richard's approach to safety and protection revealed the evolution of his character, from carefree young man to responsible father. While he maintained his natural optimism and refused to live in constant fear of potential dangers, he also developed a keen awareness of genuine risks and a fierce determination to shield his son from harm. This protective instinct was not expressed through over-controlling behavior or excessive anxiety, but rather through thoughtful attention to Gumball's environment and needs. The financial pressures of supporting a family on their limited income might have been overwhelming for a couple focused primarily on material security and conventional measures of success. Yet Richard's philosophy regarding money and possessions provided a framework for contentment that allowed them to give their son everything he truly needed while maintaining their own happiness and stability. Richard understood intuitively that children required love, attention, and security far more than they needed expensive toys or elaborate experiences. His gift for creating entertainment from simple materials meant that Gumball's childhood was filled with creative play and imaginative adventures that cost nothing but provided memories that would last a lifetime. Empty cardboard boxes became spaceships, kitchen utensils became musical instruments, and bedtime stories became elaborate adventures that transported them to worlds limited only by their shared imagination. The transformation that Richard underwent during those first months of fatherhood was not dramatic or sudden, but rather a gradual deepening of qualities that had always been part of his character. His natural empathy expanded to encompass not just his immediate family, but all the children he encountered, as he began to understand the vulnerability and potential that existed in every young person. His patience, already considerable, became seemingly infinite when applied to the needs and demands of his son. His capacity for finding joy in simple moments grew even stronger as he experienced the world anew through Gumball's wondering eyes. Nicole watched this transformation with growing admiration and love for the man she had married. Richard's transition into fatherhood confirmed her instinctive understanding that his gentle nature and generous spirit would make him an extraordinary parent. His ability to remain calm during crises, to find creative solutions to unexpected problems, and to maintain his sense of humor, even during the most challenging moments, provided stability and reassurance that benefited both her and their son. The establishment of family traditions during Gumball's earliest months laid the groundwork for the rich and meaningful childhood that Richard was determined to provide. Sunday morning, pancakes became elaborate affairs where Gumball could help with age-appropriate tasks and learn about cooperation and sharing. Evening walks around their neighborhood became opportunities for discovery and conversation, even when Gumball's contributions consisted primarily of babbling and pointing at interesting sights. Richard's natural talent for storytelling found its perfect expression in the bedtime routine he established with his son. These were not simply readings from purchased books, but rather collaborative adventures where Gumball's interests and preferences helped shape the narrative direction. Richard's ability to improvise characters and plot lines that captured his son's imagination, while subtly teaching lessons about friendship, kindness, and problem-solving, demonstrated his intuitive understanding of how children learn and grow. The first year of Gumball's life passed with the kind of speed that all parents experience, but that still surprised Richard and Nicole with its relentless forward momentum. Each day brought new developments and discoveries, from first words to first steps, to the gradual emergence of a distinct personality that combined Richard's cheerful nature with Nicole's intelligence and determination. As they celebrated Gumball's first birthday with a simple party in their tiny apartment, surrounded by family and friends who had supported them through the adjustments and challenges of new parenthood, Richard reflected on how completely his understanding of happiness and fulfillment had been transformed by fatherhood. The contentment he had always found in simple pleasures was now magnified by the presence of someone who shared his wonder at the world's everyday miracles. The pink rabbit, who had once been satisfied with his own company and simple entertainments, had discovered that his greatest joy came not from personal contentment, but from nurturing and celebrating the growth and happiness of his child. Fatherhood had not changed Richard's essential character, but had rather provided the perfect context for expressing and developing the qualities that had always defined him: his capacity for unconditional love, his gift for finding magic in ordinary moments, and his unwavering belief that the most important things in life were the relationships that connected people to each other across the brief and precious span of human existence. The decision to expand their family once again came not from careful planning or biological clock pressure, but from Richard's characteristic understanding that love multiplies rather than divides when shared among more people. The tiny apartment that had felt perfectly adequate for 2 adults and 1 small child began to feel less like a cozy nest and more like a space waiting to be filled with additional laughter, chaos, and the particular kind of joy that comes from watching different personalities develop and interact within the same loving environment. The choice to adopt a pet marked Richard's first major decision as a father that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of their family's story. Nicole's initial reaction to his suggestion that they visit the local pet store was colored by practical concerns about their limited space, their tight budget, and the additional responsibilities that any animal would bring to their already complicated daily routine. Yet Richard's enthusiasm for the idea, combined with his patient explanation of how a pet could enrich Gumball's childhood and teach him important lessons about care and responsibility, gradually won her over to the possibility. The pet store itself was a wonderland of possibilities that seemed to offer everything from conventional choices like cats and dogs to more exotic options that captured the imagination, even as they challenged practical considerations. Richard approached the selection process with the same thoughtful attention he brought to all important decisions, taking time to observe different animals and consider how they might fit into their family's unique, dynamic, and living situation. When his eyes first fell upon a small orange goldfish swimming circles in a modest tank near the back of the store, Richard felt the same immediate connection that had marked every other significant relationship in his life. There was something about this particular fish, perhaps the determined way he navigated his small environment, or the alert intelligence that seemed to shine in his tiny eyes that spoke to Richard's intuitive understanding of character and potential. The goldfish was unremarkable in most objective ways, indistinguishable from dozens of others in neighboring tanks, and possessing none of the obvious appeal of more interactive pets like puppies or kittens. Yet Richard saw past the surface characteristics to recognize something special, the same way he had once seen past Nicole's defensive exterior to understand the lonely, brilliant person beneath, the same way he would later recognize extraordinary qualities in ordinary moments throughout his entire life. The name Darwin came to Richard with the spontaneous certainty that accompanies all his best decisions, emerging not from any particular association with the famous scientist, but simply because it felt right, because it seemed to capture something essential about this small creature who would soon become an integral part of their family's story. The choice reflected Richard's instinctive understanding that names carry power and meaning, that the act of naming something is also an act of claiming and cherishing it. Gumball's reaction to the arrival of his new pet was everything Richard had hoped for, and more. The 2-year-old boy approached Darwin's tank with the kind of focused fascination that children reserve for truly captivating discoveries, pressing his nose against the glass and attempting to communicate with the fish through a combination of gestures, facial expressions, and the elaborate babbling that served as his primary language during those early developmental stages. Richard watched these initial interactions with the satisfaction of someone whose intuition has been validated by experience. He had anticipated that Gumball would form a connection with Darwin, but the immediate and profound bond that developed between boy and fish exceeded even his optimistic expectations. Within hours of Darwin's arrival, Gumball had established himself as the fish's primary caretaker and companion, taking responsibility for feeding schedules and water changes with the seriousness that children bring to tasks they consider genuinely important. The transformation that began almost immediately in Darwin was so gradual and subtle that it might have escaped the attention of less observant caregivers. Richard, however, had developed the habit of paying careful attention to the small changes and developments that marked significant transitions, and he noticed from the very beginning that this was not an ordinary pet adapting to an ordinary household. Darwin's intelligence became apparent first in small ways. His ability to recognize different family members, his responsiveness to his name, and his apparent understanding of daily routines and expectations. Where other goldfish might swim aimlessly or respond only to the most basic stimuli of food and light, Darwin demonstrated problem-solving abilities and social awareness that seemed to transcend normal fish behavior. Richard's response to these developments was characteristically accepting and encouraging. Rather than viewing Darwin's unusual capabilities as concerning or impossible, he embraced them as evidence that their family was blessed with something special and wonderful. His approach to Darwin's evolution was guided by the same philosophy that governed all his relationships, that love and acceptance create the conditions in which everyone can become the best version of themselves. The physical changes that accompanied Darwin's intellectual development were even more remarkable and impossible to ignore. Over the course of several months, the small goldfish began to develop characteristics that seemed to blur the line between aquatic and terrestrial life. Primitive legs appeared, allowing him to venture briefly outside his tank. Lungs developed alongside gills, enabling him to breathe air as well as water. Most remarkably, his capacity for speech emerged gradually, beginning with simple sounds and progressing to words, sentences, and eventually the complex communications that would characterize his interactions with the rest of the family. Richard's reaction to Darwin's unprecedented evolution was a masterpiece of parental wisdom and unconditional acceptance. While others might have been frightened or confused by such dramatic changes, Richard saw only the continuation of a natural process that had begun the moment Darwin joined their family. His faith in love's power to create positive transformation allowed him to embrace Darwin's development without anxiety or attempts to control or limit the process. The practical challenges of caring for an evolving pet required the same creative problem-solving that Richard brought to all aspects of family life. Darwin's changing needs demanded modifications to their living space, adjustments to their daily routines, and new approaches to ensuring his safety and comfort during each stage of his remarkable development. Richard approached these challenges with patience and ingenuity, creating solutions that accommodated Darwin's unique requirements, while maintaining the stability and normalcy that Gumball needed during his own crucial developmental period. Nicole's adjustment to Darwin's evolution was more complex, colored by her natural tendency to seek logical explanations for phenomena that seemed to defy scientific understanding. Yet Richard's calm acceptance and Gumball's obvious happiness with their extraordinary pet gradually helped her recognize that some experiences transcend rational analysis and must simply be embraced as gifts that don't require complete understanding to be fully appreciated. The moment when Darwin first spoke in complete sentences marked a fundamental shift in their family dynamic, transforming what had been a household with 2 parents and 1 child into something entirely new and unprecedented. Darwin's first coherent words were not random sounds or simple repetitions, but rather expressions of gratitude and affection that demonstrated his awareness of how completely he had been accepted and loved by his adoptive family. Richard's immediate recognition of Darwin as his son, equal in every important way to Gumball, despite their biological differences, reflected his profound understanding that families are created not by genetics, but by choice, commitment, and unconditional love. The expansion of his paternal identity to encompass an evolved goldfish required no internal struggle or philosophical adjustment, because it was simply the natural extension of feelings that had been growing since Darwin's arrival in their home. The relationship that developed between Gumball and Darwin was one of the most beautiful and remarkable aspects of their family's unique story. The two brothers, despite their different species and origins, formed a bond that transcended conventional sibling relationships and demonstrated the power of shared experiences and mutual acceptance to create deep and lasting connections. Richard's role in fostering this relationship was subtle but crucial. He never treated Gumball and Darwin's friendship as unusual or remarkable, never called attention to their differences or expressed surprise at their ability to communicate and play together. Instead, he simply provided the stable, loving environment in which their bond could develop naturally, intervening only when necessary to ensure their safety or to help them navigate conflicts with the wisdom and patience that would characterize his approach to all their childhood challenges. The discovery that Nicole was pregnant again came during this period of adjustment to their expanded family, adding another layer of complexity and joy to an already rich and complicated household dynamic. The news of their daughter's impending arrival brought with it questions about how to accommodate yet another family member in their small space, and how to ensure that each child received the individual attention and care they would need to thrive. Richard's reaction to the pregnancy announcement was colored by his recent experience with Darwin's evolution and integration into their family. He had learned through direct experience that love expands to accommodate new family members rather than being diluted by their presence, that each addition brings unique gifts and perspectives that enrich the whole family's experience rather than creating competition for limited resources of affection and attention. The months of Nicole's pregnancy were marked by Richard's careful attention to maintaining stability and continuity for Gumball and Darwin, while preparing all of them for the changes that would come with a new baby. His approach was characterized by inclusion rather than exclusion, involving both boys in age-appropriate preparations and helping them understand their important roles. As big brothers in the family, they were all creating together. The anticipation of their daughter's arrival created new opportunities for family bonding and shared excitement. Richard's bedtime stories began to include adventures featuring 3 siblings rather than the solo exploits that had entertained Gumball in his earlier years. Their evening walks became opportunities to speculate about what their sister might be like and how she would fit into their family's established routines and traditions. When Anais Watterson finally made her appearance in the world, her arrival brought with it immediate evidence that she would add yet another unique dynamic to their already extraordinary family composition. Even as a newborn, she displayed signs of exceptional intelligence that suggested she would develop along very different lines from either of her brothers, bringing her own special gifts and challenges to their household. Richard's first meeting with his daughter produced the same overwhelming surge of protective love that had marked Gumball's birth, but deepened by his additional experience as a father and enriched by his understanding of how completely each child would transform and be transformed by their family relationships. Anais represented not just another person to love and care for, but another unique perspective that would contribute to the complex and wonderful dynamic that was the Watterson family. The early days with 3 children tested Richard's abilities as a father in new and challenging ways. The practical demands of caring for an infant while maintaining relationships with a toddler and an evolved goldfish required organizational skills and energy management that pushed him beyond anything he had previously experienced. Yet his natural patience and his genuine delight in each child's individual personality provided the foundation for developing new routines and approaches that met everyone's needs. Richard's recognition of Anais's exceptional intelligence became apparent during her earliest months, as she demonstrated cognitive abilities and awareness that far exceeded normal infant development. Rather than being intimidated by her obvious intellectual gifts or concerned about his ability to guide such a brilliant child, Richard embraced her unique capabilities as another wonderful aspect of their family's diversity. His approach to parenting Anais reflected his understanding that intelligence, like any other special ability, flourished best in an environment of acceptance and encouragement rather than pressure or excessive expectation. He treated her remarkable insights and precocious observations as natural expressions of her personality, rather than performances to be praised or problems to be managed, creating the foundation for a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine appreciation. The establishment of new family traditions that included all three children required creativity and flexibility that drew upon Richard's natural talent for finding ways to make everyone feel included and valued. Bedtime stories became collaborative adventures where each child could contribute ideas and preferences. Mealtimes transformed into opportunities for conversation and connection that accommodated different developmental stages and communication styles. Richard's ability to see each child's unique gifts and needs while maintaining his vision of their family as a unified whole became one of his greatest strengths as a father. He never tried to force his children into predetermined roles or expected them to conform to conventional sibling dynamics. Instead, he celebrated their differences and helped each of them understand how their individual contributions made their family stronger and more interesting. The financial and practical challenges of supporting three children on their modest income might have been overwhelming for parents focused primarily on material security and conventional measures of success. Yet Richard's philosophy regarding money and possessions, combined with his creativity in finding low-cost solutions to complex problems, allowed them to provide everything their children truly needed, while maintaining the stability and happiness that were the true foundations of their family life. Richard understood intuitively that children benefit far more from present, engaged parents than from expensive possessions or elaborate experiences. His gift for creating meaningful activities from simple materials meant that Gumball, Darwin, and Anais grew up in an environment rich with imagination, creativity, and opportunities for learning and growth that cost nothing but provided benefits that would last throughout their lives. The completion of the Watterson family unit with Anais's arrival marked the end of one chapter in Richard's life and the beginning of another. He had successfully navigated the transition from couple to family, had embraced the challenges and rewards of raising children with very different personalities and needs, and had created a household environment where love, acceptance, and individual expression were the guiding principles that shaped every interaction and decision. As he looked around their small apartment, now bustling with the activity and energy of three young children, Richard felt a contentment that transcended any material limitations or external measures of success. He had discovered his true calling as a father and had created something beautiful and meaningful that would continue to grow and evolve as his children developed their own unique paths through life. The pink rabbit, who had once found wonder in simple pleasures, had learned to find even greater joy in nurturing and celebrating the wonder that existed in each of his extraordinary children. The gentle rhythms of a typical day in the Watterson household began long before the sun painted the eastern sky with its first tentative brushstrokes of gold and rose, starting instead with the soft stirring of consciousness that marked Richard's natural transition from the peaceful realm of sleep to the eager anticipation of another day, filled with the countless small adventures that domestic life could offer to someone with eyes trained to see wonder in the most ordinary circumstances. Richard's morning routine was not governed by alarm clocks or rigid schedules, but rather by his body's intuitive understanding of the household's needs and the gentle biological rhythms that connected him to his family's sleeping and waking patterns. He would emerge from bed with the quiet contentment of someone whose dreams had been pleasant and whose first thoughts upon waking were filled with gratitude for another opportunity to spend time with the people he loved most in the Faime world. The kitchen, in those early morning hours, became Richard's private sanctuary, a space where he could move through the familiar rituals of breakfast preparation with the meditative focus of someone performing a beloved ceremony. The simple act of brewing coffee for Nicole carried within it layers of meaning and intention. Not just the practical necessity of providing caffeine to fuel her demanding day ahead, but also the expression of care and consideration that had characterized their relationship since its earliest stages. Richard's approach to breakfast was elevated far above mere sustenance by his natural understanding that food could serve as a vehicle for love, creativity, and family connection. The pancakes he prepared on weekend mornings were not simply combinations of flour and eggs and milk, but rather edible expressions of his desire to create something special and memorable for his children. Each pancake became a canvas for artistic expression, shaped into animals or cartoon characters or abstract designs that would delight Gumball and Darwin while providing Anais with opportunities to observe and analyze the mathematical principles underlying his seemingly spontaneous creations. The television that dominated one corner of their living room was not merely an entertainment device in Richard's hands, but rather a window into worlds of imagination and possibility that could spark conversations, inspire creative play, and provide shared experiences that brought the family together in ways that more structured activities sometimes failed to achieve. His relationship with television programming was deeply appreciative, rather than passively consumptive, treating each show as a potential source of wisdom, humor, or insight into the human condition. Richard's commentary during their family viewing sessions revealed the depth of thought that lay beneath his apparently simple enjoyment of popular entertainment. He would point out clever plot developments, celebrate particularly funny jokes, and draw connections between fictional situations and real-life experiences that helped his children develop their own abilities to think critically about the media they consumed while still maintaining their capacity for pure enjoyment. The domestic responsibilities that filled Richard's daily schedule were transformed by his approach from tedious obligations into opportunities for mindfulness, creativity, and connection with his family's needs and rhythms. When he folded laundry, he did so with careful attention to each garment, treating his family's clothing as extensions of the people he loved, and ensuring that every item was cared for with the same gentleness he brought to all his interactions with their possessions. His method of cleaning house was characterized by the same philosophical approach that governed all his activities, a recognition that the physical environment in which his family lived reflected and influenced their emotional and spiritual well-being. A clean kitchen was not just aesthetically pleasing, but also a space where meals could be prepared with joy and shared with gratitude. Organized living areas were not merely tidy, but also welcoming spaces where creativity and relaxation could flourish without the distraction of chaos or disorder. Yet Richard's commitment to maintaining their home never became obsessive or rigid, because he understood intuitively that perfect cleanliness was far less important than the atmosphere of acceptance and love that made their house truly feel like home. When Gumball's art projects left glue and glitter scattered across the dining table, or when Darwin's experiments with water transportation created puddles in unexpected locations, Richard's response was characterized by patient cleanup rather than frustrated scolding. The wisdom that Richard dispensed throughout each day was rarely presented as formal advice or structured lessons, but rather emerged naturally from his responses to the countless small crises and questions that arose in the course of family life. When Gumball became frustrated with a toy that refused to work properly, Richard's intervention might involve not just mechanical assistance but also gentle observations about patience, persistence, and the satisfaction that comes from solving problems through creative thinking rather than force or anger. His approach to discipline represented a revolutionary departure from conventional parenting wisdom, based as it was on the understanding that children's misbehavior usually stemmed from unmet needs, misunderstood emotions, or simple developmental limitations, rather than deliberate defiance or moral failings. When conflicts arose between siblings, or when individual children struggled with difficult emotions, Richard's first instinct was always to listen and understand before attempting to correct or redirect. The bedtime routine that Richard established with his children became one of the most cherished and important traditions in their household, a daily ceremony that provided closure to each day while creating anticipation for the adventures that tomorrow might bring. His storytelling during these sessions was not simply entertainment, but rather a collaborative art form where each child's interests, concerns, and imagination could find expression and validation. Richard's stories were crafted not from predetermined plots or moral lessons, but from his deep understanding of what each child needed to hear at any given moment. When Gumball was struggling with friendship difficulties at school, the bedtime adventure might feature characters who learned valuable lessons about loyalty and forgiveness. When Darwin was grappling with questions about his unique identity, the story might explore themes of belonging and acceptance that helped him understand his special place in their family. Aeneas's intellectual precocity required a different approach to bedtime stories, one that could engage her sophisticated understanding while still providing the comfort and security that bedtime rituals were meant to offer. Richard's ability to create narratives that worked on multiple levels, simple enough for a young child to follow but complex enough to satisfy a brilliant mind, demonstrated his intuitive understanding of how to communicate effectively with people whose needs and capabilities differed dramatically from conventional expectations. The games and activities that Richard invented to fill the quiet hours of afternoon and evening were masterpieces of creative problem-solving that transformed their modest living space into venues for adventure, learning, and family bonding. A simple cardboard box could become a spaceship for interplanetary exploration, a castle for medieval adventures, or a secret laboratory for scientific experiments, depending on what kind of play seemed most appealing to the children on any given day. Richard's talent for finding educational value in seemingly frivolous activities was one of his greatest gifts as a father. When he and the children built elaborate structures from couch cushions and blankets, they were not just creating forts but also learning about architecture, engineering, and spatial relationships. When they conducted cooking experiments in the kitchen, they were exploring chemistry, mathematics, and cultural traditions while creating memories that would last throughout their lives. The philosophical discussions that emerged naturally from these play sessions revealed the depth of Richard's understanding about child development and learning. He never talked down to his children or simplified complex concepts beyond their ability to grasp, but he also never overwhelmed them with information that exceeded their developmental readiness to understand and apply. His approach to handling the inevitable conflicts and disappointments that arose in daily family life demonstrated wisdom that went far beyond conventional parenting advice. When Nicole came home stressed from work and her tension began to affect the entire household's emotional climate, Richard's response was not to minimize her concerns or demand that she separate her professional frustrations from her family life, but rather to provide the kind of patient support and understanding that helped her process her emotions while protecting the children from unnecessary exposure to adult anxieties. Richard's gift for diffusing tense situations through humor was never deployed as a way of avoiding serious issues or dismissing legitimate concerns, but rather as a tool for creating emotional space where problems could be addressed constructively rather than defensively. His jokes and funny observations served to remind everyone that most daily crises were temporary inconveniences rather than permanent catastrophes, that laughter could coexist with problem solving, and that maintaining perspective was often the key to finding effective solutions. The financial management philosophy that Richard brought to their household challenged conventional wisdom about money and security in ways that initially made Nicole nervous, but eventually proved to be both practical and emotionally satisfying. His approach was based on the radical idea that happiness came from appreciating what they already had, rather than constantly striving to acquire more, that security came from strong relationships and creative problem solving, rather than large bank accounts and extensive possessions. When unexpected expenses arose, and they arose regularly in a household with 3 children and limited income, Richard's response was characterized by calm assessment and creative solution finding, rather than panic or resentment. He had a talent for identifying which expenses were truly necessary and which were simply convenient, for finding alternative ways to meet their family's needs without compromising their financial stability or emotional well-being. His ability to create memorable experiences and meaningful traditions on minimal budgets was legendary among their friends and extended family. Birthday parties became elaborate celebrations, not through expensive decorations or professional entertainment, but through Richard's talent for creating games, activities, and surprises that made each child feel truly special and celebrated. The holiday traditions that Richard established in their household were characterized by creativity, inclusiveness, and focus on the values and connections that made celebrations meaningful rather than merely expensive. Christmas mornings were filled with excitement and wonder, not because of the quantity or cost of gifts, but because of the thoughtfulness and love that went into selecting or creating presents that reflected deep understanding of each family member's interests and needs. Richard's approach to teaching his children about money and material possessions was subtle but consistent, based on modeling rather than lecturing. He demonstrated through his daily choices that happiness came from relationships and experiences rather than acquisitions, that generosity toward others was more satisfying than hoarding resources for himself, and that creative problem solving was more valuable than simply purchasing solutions to every challenge. The community that Richard built around his family extended far beyond their immediate household to encompass neighbors, friends, and even casual acquaintances who were drawn to the warmth and acceptance that characterized all his interactions. His natural gift for making people feel valued and appreciated meant that their home became a gathering place where children and adults alike felt comfortable sharing their thoughts, concerns, and celebrations. Richard's role as an informal counselor and mediator was never something he sought or advertised, but rather emerged naturally from his combination of genuine care for others and intuitive understanding of human nature. When neighborhood children came to him with problems they felt unable to discuss with their own parents, he provided listening ears and gentle guidance without overstepping appropriate boundaries or undermining parental authority. His relationship with Nicole, during this period of intensive parenting, demonstrated the strength and flexibility of their partnership in ways that reinforced their individual commitments while supporting their shared goals. Richard's ability to handle the majority of domestic responsibilities allowed Nicole to pursue her career ambitions without guilt or anxiety about whether their children's needs were being met. Her success in the professional world provided financial stability that allowed Richard to focus on the aspects of family life where his talents were most valuable. The daily conversations between Richard and Nicole, usually conducted during the brief, quiet moments after the children were asleep, became opportunities for them to maintain their connection as a couple, while coordinating their approaches to parenting and household management. These discussions were characterized by mutual respect, shared decision-making, and the kind of honest communication that had attracted them to each other in the first place. Richard's understanding of Nicole's need for structure and achievement was matched by her growing appreciation for his ability to find contentment and meaning in circumstances that others might consider limiting or frustrating. Their different approaches to life created a balance that benefited not only their relationship but also their children's development, providing multiple models for how to navigate the challenges and opportunities that life presented. The legacy that Richard was creating through his daily choices and actions was not visible in conventional terms of career advancement or financial accumulation, but rather in the gradual development of his children's characters and their understanding of what made life meaningful and satisfying. His influence on Gumball's natural optimism and creativity, on Darwin's capacity for loyalty and adaptation, and on Aeneas's ability to balance intellectual achievement with emotional intelligence, represented achievements that would benefit not only his immediate family, but also everyone who would encounter his children throughout their lives. As each day drew to its peaceful conclusion with the completion of bedtime routines, the securing of the house for the night, and the few quiet moments of reflection that Richard allowed himself before sleep, he could feel the deep satisfaction that comes from having spent his time and energy on activities and relationships that truly mattered. The pink rabbit, who had once found contentment in simple pleasures, had discovered that the greatest pleasure of all was creating an environment where the people he loved could flourish and grow into the best possible versions of themselves, supported always by the unconditional love and acceptance that made every ordinary day feel like a small miracle worthy of celebration and gratitude. The gentle facade of everyday contentment that characterized Richard Watterson's approach to domestic life concealed depths of ability and strength that emerged only during moments when his family's safety or well-being demanded access to capabilities that seemed to exist in stark contrast to his usual preference for peaceful, unhurried existence. These hidden reserves of power were not the result of secret training or suppressed ambitions, but rather the natural consequence of love so profound that it could temporarily override every instinct toward comfort and tranquility in service of protecting those who mattered most to him. The first glimpse that Nicole had received of Richard's true physical capabilities had come during their early married years, when a late-night walk through their neighborhood had been interrupted by the appearance of three men whose intentions were clearly neither friendly nor legal. Nicole's initial reaction had been fear, not just for their safety but for Richard's, because her understanding of her husband's character had led her to assume that his gentle nature extended to every aspect of his being, including his ability to respond effectively to physical threats. Yet when the situation escalated beyond the possibility of peaceful resolution, when words and diplomacy had failed to convince their would-be assailants to seek easier targets elsewhere, something fundamental had shifted in Richard's demeanor. The transformation was not dramatic or visible in conventional terms. No bulging muscles or intimidating postures announced the change, but rather expressed itself through a subtle alteration in his presence that somehow communicated absolute confidence and unwavering determination to protect his wife from harm. The confrontation that followed lasted perhaps 30 seconds, but those brief moments had revealed capabilities that Nicole would spend years trying to fully understand and appreciate. Richard's movements during the altercation were economical and precise, displaying a combination of speed, strength, and tactical awareness that seemed to have emerged from nowhere and yet felt completely natural, as if he were finally expressing abilities that had always existed beneath the surface of his carefully maintained tranquility. When the three men had fled into the darkness, nursing injuries that would heal but carrying memories that would make them think twice before threatening innocent people again, Richard had immediately reverted to his usual gentle demeanor. His primary concern was for Nicole's emotional state rather than celebration of his own effectiveness, and his explanation for what had just occurred was characteristically simple and unpretentious. When people he loved were threatened, he became capable of things that surprised even him. The years that followed had brought occasional glimpses of these hidden depths, usually during family emergencies that demanded rapid response and decisive action. When Gumball had fallen from a tree during one of their neighborhood adventures and lay unconscious with what appeared to be serious injuries, Richard's reaction had demonstrated physical capabilities that seemed to defy reasonable explanation. He had covered the distance to his son's side with speed that made him appear to blur rather than run, had assessed Gumball's condition with knowledge that seemed to come from nowhere, and had carried his injured child to medical attention with a combination of speed and gentleness that suggested access to abilities far beyond normal human parameters. The doctors who had treated Gumball's injuries, which proved to be far less serious than they had initially appeared, had been impressed not just by Richard's rapid response, but by his intuitive understanding of proper first aid techniques and his ability to provide accurate information about his son's condition. Despite having no formal medical training, when asked about his knowledge and capabilities, Richard had deflected their questions with his characteristic modesty, suggesting that any parent would have reacted similarly when faced with their child's potential suffering. Yet those who observed Richard carefully during moments of crisis began to recognize that his responses went far beyond typical parental protective instincts. His physical strength, usually hidden beneath his preference for gentle solutions to problems, occasionally manifested in ways that challenged conventional understanding of what should be possible for someone of his apparent fitness level and training background. The incident with the malfunctioning playground equipment had become legendary among the parents who had witnessed it, though Richard himself rarely spoke about what had happened and seemed genuinely puzzled by others' amazement at his actions. When the metal climbing structure had begun to collapse while several children, including Darwin, were playing on it, Richard's immediate response had been to position himself beneath the heaviest section and physically support the entire apparatus until all the children could reach safety. The weight he had sustained during those crucial minutes should have been sufficient to cause serious injury, or worse, to any normal person. Yet Richard had emerged from the incident with nothing more than minor scrapes and a rueful comment about the importance of regular playground maintenance. His ability to bear such tremendous loads while maintaining the mental clarity necessary to coordinate the children's evacuation had impressed even the emergency responders who had arrived to find the situation already resolved. The musical talents that Richard possessed represented another dimension of his hidden depths, capabilities that emerged during quiet family moments and revealed artistic sensibilities that complemented his philosophical approach to life in ways that enriched their entire household's cultural and emotional environment. His relationship with music was not technical or formal, but rather intuitive and expressive, allowing him to create sounds and rhythms that captured moods and feelings that words alone could not adequately convey. The piano that had been Nicole's childhood instrument, rescued from her parents' house and squeezed into their small living room despite the space constraints it created, had become under Richard's hands a vehicle for musical storytelling that provided soundtrack and emotional depth to their family's daily experiences. His playing style was entirely self-taught and completely unconventional, combining elements from every musical tradition he had ever encountered into compositions that were uniquely his own. Richard's musical improvisations during family gatherings created atmosphere and connection that transformed ordinary evenings into memorable celebrations. When the children were restless or the household energy felt scattered, his ability to find melodies that matched and then gradually shifted the emotional climate helped restore harmony and focus to their shared activities. His music was never performed for external audiences or recognition, but rather offered as a gift to the people he loved, creating moments of beauty and transcendence that required no special occasion or formal setting. The songs that Richard created for bedtime routines became treasured family traditions that evolved and developed as his children grew and their interests and needs changed. These musical stories were collaborative efforts where Gumball's enthusiastic suggestions, Darwin's thoughtful contributions, and Ananias's sophisticated observations could all find expression through Richard's ability to weave their ideas into coherent and emotionally satisfying narratives. His talent for musical mimicry and sound effects added layers of entertainment and engagement to their storytelling sessions that went far beyond simple singing. Richard could recreate the sounds of different animals, weather phenomena, and mechanical devices with accuracy that amazed his children while teaching them about the natural and artificial worlds around them. These performances were never showed off or used to seek attention for himself, but rather employed in service of creating richer and more immersive experiences for his family. The artistic abilities that Richard demonstrated through various creative projects throughout their household revealed yet another aspect of his multifaceted character, capabilities that emerged naturally from his desire to create beauty and meaning in their domestic environment without requiring expensive materials or formal training. His approach to visual art was characterized by the same intuitive understanding and natural talent that marked his musical expressions, allowing him to transform simple materials into decorations and functional objects that reflected his family's personality and values. Richard's gift for finding artistic potential in everyday objects meant that their home was filled with unique and meaningful decorations that told the story of their family's experiences and interests. Empty containers became sculptural elements. Children's artwork was incorporated into larger compositions, and household items were arranged and rearranged to create visual harmony that made their modest space feel both welcoming and aesthetically pleasing. The surprise that others expressed when witnessing Richard's various talents was matched by his own apparent unawareness of how unusual his capabilities were. His attitude toward his own abilities was characterized by the same humility and lack of pretension that marked every aspect of his character, treating his talents as natural expressions of his love for his family rather than achievements worthy of special recognition or pride. This unconscious relationship with his own gifts meant that Richard never used his abilities to seek attention, impress others, or gain advantages in competitive situations. Instead, his talents emerged only when circumstances demanded them or when they could contribute to his family's happiness and well-being, remaining dormant during times when their expression was unnecessary or potentially disruptive to the peaceful existence he preferred. The intellectual capabilities that Richard possessed were perhaps the most carefully hidden of all his gifts, concealed beneath his preference for simple explanations and straightforward approaches to complex problems. His apparent lack of interest in academic achievement or intellectual discourse masked a mind capable of remarkable insights and creative problem-solving that often surprised even those who knew him best. The solutions that Richard developed for seemingly impossible household challenges revealed thought processes that were both sophisticated and entirely practical, combining theoretical understanding with hands-on experimentation in ways that produced results without requiring expensive equipment or professional expertise. When their ancient washing machine had finally succumbed to years of faithful service, Richard's repair efforts had involved not just mechanical skills, but also engineering creativity that transformed a hopeless situation into a learning opportunity for himself and his children. His ability to understand and work with complex systems extended far beyond household appliances to encompass everything from automotive repair to computer troubleshooting, always approached with the same patient experimentation and willingness to learn from both successes and failures. Richard's relationship with technology was never intimidating or frustrating because he approached each challenge with curiosity rather than anxiety, treating mechanical problems as puzzles to be solved rather than obstacles to be overcome through force or frustration. The conversations that Richard had with Aeneas as her intellectual development accelerated revealed his ability to engage with sophisticated concepts and abstract reasoning while maintaining his characteristic warmth and accessibility. His discussions with his brilliant daughter were never condescending or simplified beyond her ability to understand, but they also never became purely academic exercises, divorced from practical application and emotional relevance. Richard's talent for helping Aeneas explore complex ideas while remaining grounded in family relationships and real-world experiences demonstrated his understanding that intelligence without wisdom was incomplete, that knowledge without compassion was insufficient, and that academic achievement without personal happiness was ultimately unsatisfying. His influence on her intellectual development was subtle but profound, helping her maintain connections to emotions and relationships that complemented rather than competed with her academic pursuits. The emergency situations that periodically tested Richard's hidden capabilities revealed not just physical strength or intellectual prowess, but also emotional resilience and leadership abilities that emerged naturally when circumstances demanded decisive action and clear thinking under pressure. His responses to family crises were characterized by calm assessment, creative problem-solving, and unwavering focus on protecting and supporting the people he loved. When Nicole had been hospitalized during a particularly difficult period in their lives, Richard's ability to maintain household routines, manage 3 children's emotional needs, and coordinate medical care had demonstrated organizational and emotional skills that surprised even those who knew him well. His approach to crisis management was never frantic or overwhelming, but rather methodical and reassuring, providing stability and security for his family during times when uncertainty and fear might have otherwise dominated their experience. The strength that Richard showed during these challenging periods was not the kind that demanded recognition or praise, but rather the quiet resilience that allows people to endure hardship without losing sight of hope or abandoning their recognition, commitment to the well-being of others. His ability to find reasons for gratitude and moments of joy, even during difficult circumstances, provided emotional anchoring for his entire family and demonstrated the depth of his philosophical understanding about what made life meaningful and worthwhile. The legacy that Richard was creating through the expression of his various talents and capabilities was not measured in external achievements or public recognition, but rather in the countless ways that his hidden depths enriched and protected his family's daily experience. His children were growing up with an understanding that people often possess far more potential than they initially reveal, that strength comes in many different forms, and that the most impressive capabilities are often those that serve others rather than glorifying oneself. The pink rabbit who appeared to spend his days in contented simplicity was in reality a complex and remarkably capable individual whose greatest achievement was creating an environment where his extraordinary abilities could remain hidden until needed, while his love and dedication remained constantly visible and available to everyone who shared his life. His hidden depths were not secrets to be eventually revealed or talents to be developed for external recognition, but rather resources to be drawn upon whenever his family's happiness, safety, or well-being required access to capabilities that transcended ordinary human limitations. The suburban tranquility that had long surrounded the Watterson household like a protective cocoon was destined to be tested by the inevitable storms that visit every family, regardless of how carefully they have constructed their foundations of love and mutual support. These challenges arrived not as single dramatic events, but rather as a series of interconnected difficulties that seemed to accumulate like gathering clouds, each one manageable in isolation, but collectively creating atmospheric pressure that tested every aspect of Richard's philosophy and approach to life. The first major crisis to disturb their peaceful existence emerged from the collision between their family's modest financial resources and the increasingly complex demands of raising 3 children in a world where costs seemed to rise faster than income, where unexpected expenses arrived with the regularity of seasonal weather patterns, and where the simple act of maintaining basic household stability required constant vigilance and creative problem-solving. The washing machine that had served faithfully through countless loads of laundry finally succumbed to mechanical failure on a Tuesday morning when Nicole was already running late for an important work presentation and Gumball had managed to spill chocolate milk across his school uniform. The timing of this domestic disaster was particularly challenging because their emergency fund had recently been depleted by an unexpected medical expense, leaving them without the immediate resources necessary to replace an appliance that was essential to their daily functioning as a family. Richard's response to this crisis revealed both his practical problem-solving abilities and his philosophical approach to dealing with circumstances beyond his immediate control. Rather than expressing frustration or anxiety about their financial limitations, he immediately began exploring alternative solutions that could address their immediate needs while respecting their budgetary constraints. His investigation of local laundromats, his research into used appliance dealers, and his patient telephone conversations with repair services demonstrated his understanding that most problems had multiple potential solutions if approached with creativity and persistence. The temporary inconvenience of washing clothes at the local laundromat became, under Richard's influence, an opportunity for family adventure and community connection that none of them had previously experienced. His ability to transform a frustrating necessity into an enjoyable outing demonstrated his talent for finding silver linings in challenging circumstances, while teaching his children that adaptability and positive attitude could make even difficult situations more bearable. The resolution of the washing machine crisis came not through expensive replacement or professional repair, but through Richard's willingness to learn new skills and invest time and effort in understanding mechanical systems that had previously remained mysteries to him. His patient disassembly of the broken appliance, his careful research into replacement parts, and his methodical approach to reassembly revealed capabilities that surprised even Nicole, who had grown accustomed to her husband's hidden talents, but had never seen them applied to complex mechanical repair. The success of this do-it-yourself approach to appliance maintenance established a pattern that would serve their family well through numerous similar challenges in the years that followed. Richard's growing confidence in his ability to diagnose and repair household equipment meant that future mechanical failures became opportunities for learning and skill development rather than sources of financial stress and domestic disruption. Yet the most significant challenges facing the Watterson family during this period were not mechanical or financial, but rather social and emotional, arising from the complex dynamics that emerged when their unconventional lifestyle and values came into conflict with the expectations and judgments of their neighbors and community members. The suburb in which they lived was populated primarily by families who measured success through conventional metrics of career advancement and material accumulation, creating an environment where Richard's approach to life was often misunderstood or dismissed as irresponsible. The criticism that began as whispered conversations among other parents gradually escalated into more direct confrontations that tested Richard's commitment to his principles and his ability to maintain his characteristic calm in the face of persistent hostility. The comments about his unemployment, the suggestions that Nicole deserved a more ambitious husband, and the implications that his children were suffering from his lack of conventional success created pressure that might have convinced a less confident person to abandon his chosen path in favor of more socially acceptable alternatives. Richard's response to these social pressures revealed the depth of his self-knowledge and the strength of his commitment to the values that guided his decisions. He never became defensive or argumentative when confronted with criticism of his lifestyle choices, but neither did he allow external disapproval to shake his confidence in the path he had chosen for himself and his family. His ability to remain centered and peaceful in the face of hostility demonstrated emotional resilience that was far more impressive than any conventional achievement could have been. The parent-teacher conferences that marked regular intervals in his children's educational journey became opportunities for Richard to defend and explain his parenting philosophy to educators who sometimes struggled to understand how children from such an unconventional household could be so well-adjusted, creative, and emotionally secure. His conversations with Gumball's teachers revealed their surprise at discovering that a father who seemed so unambitious and unconventional could have raised a child who was so confident, kind, and academically capable. The questions about his parenting methods that arose during these educational discussions never caused Richard to doubt his approaches, but rather provided opportunities for him to articulate the principles that guided his interactions with his children. His explanations of why he prioritized emotional development over academic achievement, why he encouraged creativity over compliance, and why he believed that happiness was a more reliable indicator of success than grades or standardized test scores, often left educators reconsidering their own assumptions about what children needed most from their families. Darwin's unique status as an evolved goldfish presented particular challenges during school interactions, requiring Richard to navigate administrative confusion and social prejudice while protecting his son from discrimination and ensuring that his educational needs were met appropriately. The patience and persistence that Richard displayed in advocating for Darwin's rights and opportunities demonstrated his willingness to confront systemic obstacles when his children's well-being was at stake. The bureaucratic battles that arose around Darwin's enrollment and participation in various school activities tested Richard's diplomatic skills and his ability to remain calm and reasonable when dealing with officials who seemed more concerned with policy compliance than with individual student needs. His success in securing appropriate accommodations for Darwin's unique circumstances came not through confrontation or legal threats, but through persistent, respectful advocacy that gradually won over even the most skeptical administrators. Aeneas's exceptional intelligence created different but equally complex challenges for Richard as he worked to ensure that her educational needs were met while protecting her from the social isolation that often accompanies intellectual giftedness. His understanding that academic acceleration was not necessarily beneficial for a child who was already struggling to connect with age-appropriate peers led him to advocate for enrichment opportunities that could challenge her intellectually without removing her from the social environment she needed for emotional development. The conversations that Richard had with educational professionals about Aeneas's needs revealed his sophisticated understanding of child development and his ability to balance multiple competing priorities in ways that served his daughter's best interests. His insistence that intellectual stimulation must be balanced with social connection and emotional support demonstrated wisdom that went far beyond conventional educational philosophy. The financial pressures that periodically threatened to overwhelm their household budget required Richard to develop increasingly creative solutions to the challenge of providing everything his family needed while living on Nicole's single income. His talent for finding alternative approaches to expensive necessities meant that their children never felt deprived or different from their peers, despite their family's modest financial resources. The birthday parties that Richard organized on minimal budgets became legendary among their children's friends for their creativity and fun factor, proving that memorable celebrations could be created through imagination and effort, rather than expensive entertainment or elaborate decorations. His ability to transform their backyard into themed adventure settings, to create games and activities that engaged children of different ages and interests, and to produce homemade treats that rivaled anything available in expensive bakeries demonstrated skills that many professional party planners would have envied. The holiday traditions that Richard established in their household were designed to maximize joy and family connection, while minimizing financial stress and material consumption. His approach to gift-giving emphasized thoughtfulness over expense, creativity over convenience, and personal meaning over commercial appeal. The presents that appeared under their Christmas tree each year were often handmade items that reflected deep understanding of each recipient's interests and needs, creating memories that lasted far longer than any store-bought alternatives could have provided. The community relationships that Richard cultivated during this period helped create support networks that benefited not only his own family, but also other households facing similar challenges. His natural gift for connecting with people from different backgrounds and circumstances meant that their neighborhood gradually became more inclusive and supportive, with families learning to share resources and assistance in ways that strengthened everyone's ability to weather difficult periods. The informal childcare exchanges that Richard helped organize among neighboring families created opportunities for parents to support each other while giving children chances to develop friendships and social skills in safe, familiar environments. His ability to coordinate schedules and mediate conflicts meant that these arrangements functioned smoothly and benefited everyone involved, creating a sense of community that had been lacking in their subdivision's previous social dynamics. The medical emergency that struck their household during Aeneas's early childhood tested every aspect of Richard's crisis management skills and emotional resilience, while creating financial pressures that threatened to overwhelm their careful budgeting. The fever that developed suddenly and escalated rapidly required immediate hospitalization and extensive testing that revealed the kind of serious illness that every parent fears but hopes never to encounter. Richard's response to this crisis demonstrated the full depth of his hidden capabilities and the strength of his commitment to his family's well-being. His ability to remain calm and focused while coordinating medical care, managing his other children's emotional needs, and handling the practical details that such emergencies create showed leadership qualities that had rarely been necessary in their peaceful daily life, but were absolutely essential during moments of genuine crisis. The hospital vigil that Richard maintained during the most critical periods of Aeneas's illness revealed his capacity for sustained effort and emotional endurance that impressed even the medical professionals who witnessed his process, dedication. His ability to provide comfort and reassurance to his daughter while managing his own anxiety and fear demonstrated emotional strength that went far beyond his usual gentle demeanor. The recovery period that followed Anais' successful treatment required adjustments to their household routines and long-term planning that tested Richard's adaptability and problem-solving skills. The medications and follow-up care that were necessary to ensure her continued health created ongoing expenses that strained their budget, but Richard's creative approaches to cost management and his success in negotiating payment arrangements with healthcare providers ensured that financial concerns never interfered with her medical care. The lessons that Richard's children learned through observing their father's responses to these various challenges were perhaps more valuable than any formal education could have provided. They witnessed firsthand the importance of remaining calm during crises, the value of creative problem-solving when resources are limited, and the power of maintaining optimism and humor even during difficult circumstances. Gumball's development of resilience and adaptability could be traced directly to his observations of how Richard handled unexpected obstacles without losing his essential cheerfulness or abandoning his commitment to his family's happiness. The confidence that Gumball displayed when facing his own challenges reflected the security he felt in knowing that his father would always find ways to overcome whatever difficulties might arise. Darwin's understanding of how to navigate complex social situations while maintaining his own authentic identity was shaped by watching Richard interact with critics and skeptics without compromising his values or becoming defensive about his choices. The diplomatic skills that Darwin developed in handling questions about his unique evolutionary status reflected lessons learned through observing his father's patient, respectful responses to ignorance and prejudice. Anais' appreciation for the difference between intelligence and wisdom was deepened by witnessing how Richard applied practical problem-solving skills to real-world challenges, while never losing sight of the human and emotional dimensions of every situation. Her growing understanding that academic achievement was less important than character development reflected the influence of a father who consistently demonstrated that true success was measured by the quality of relationships and the positive impact one had on others' lives. The strengthening of Richard and Nicole's marriage during these challenging periods proved that their partnership was built on foundations solid enough to withstand significant stress and pressure. The mutual support they provided each other, the effective division of responsibilities that played to their individual strengths, and the maintenance of their emotional connection despite external pressures demonstrated the durability of their commitment to each other and their shared vision for their family's future. Nicole's growing appreciation for Richard's unconventional strengths and his unique approach to problem-solving was deepened by witnessing how effectively he handled situations that might have overwhelmed someone with more conventional skills but less emotional intelligence and creative thinking ability. Her recognition that his apparent simplicity masked sophisticated understanding and remarkable capabilities strengthened her confidence in the choices they had made together and her commitment to supporting his approach to family life. The reputation that Richard gradually developed within their community as someone who could be relied upon during emergencies and difficult situations reflected the recognition of his hidden depths by people who had initially dismissed him as lazy or unambitious. The neighbors who had once criticized his lifestyle choices began to seek his advice and assistance when facing their own challenges, gradually learning to appreciate the wisdom and strength that lay beneath his gentle exterior. As these various trials tested and ultimately strengthened the Watterson family's bonds and capabilities, Richard's fundamental approach to life remained unchanged. His belief that love was more powerful than fear, that creativity could overcome limitation, and that happiness was a choice available to everyone regardless of their circumstances, continued to guide every decision and response. The The challenges that might have broken other families instead served to demonstrate the resilience and strength that came from building life on foundations of mutual respect, unconditional love, and unwavering commitment to each other's well-being and growth. The legacy that Richard Watterson created through his revolutionary approach to fatherhood and family life was not recorded in history books or celebrated in public ceremonies, but rather written in the daily choices and character development of three extraordinary children who carried forward his lessons about love, authenticity, and the courage required to live according to one's deepest values rather than society's external expectations. The influence of his parenting philosophy would ripple outward through generations in ways that transformed not only his immediate family, but also every person who encountered the Watterson children as they grew into adults who embodied their father's wisdom, while expressing their own unique gifts and perspectives. Gumball's development into a young man who combined optimism with resilience, creativity with responsibility, and humor with genuine compassion reflected the countless hours Richard had spent demonstrating that strength could be gentle, that leadership could be humble, and that success could be measured in terms of relationships and personal growth, rather than material achievement or social recognition. The confidence that Gumball displayed in navigating the complex social dynamics of adolescence and young adulthood stemmed directly from his childhood experiences of being accepted and celebrated exactly as he was, without conditions or expectations for change. The parenting style that Gumball would eventually develop with his own children bore the clear imprint of Richard's influence, emphasizing emotional connection over rigid discipline, creative problem-solving over authoritarian control, and the importance of maintaining wonder and playfulness throughout all stages of life. His ability to remain calm during family crises, to find humor in challenging situations, and to prioritize his children's emotional well-being over their compliance with external standards demonstrated that Richard's most important lessons had taken root and would continue to flourish in the next generation. The marriage that Gumball eventually formed was built on foundations of mutual respect and partnership that reflected his observations of how Richard and Nicole had navigated their own relationship challenges while maintaining their individual identities and supporting each other's growth. His understanding that love was expressed through daily actions rather than grand gestures, through patient listening rather than constant advice giving, and through consistent presence rather than dramatic demonstrations, showed that he had internalized Richard's approach to relationships and commitment. Darwin's unique position as an evolved goldfish who had been fully accepted and celebrated as an equal family member created a perspective on identity, belonging, and acceptance that would influence every interaction he had throughout his life. His natural diplomacy and his gift for helping others feel valued and included reflected Richard's example of how to treat every person with dignity, regardless of their background, appearance, or capabilities. The scientific interests that Darwin pursued in his academic and professional life were guided by the ethical framework that Richard had helped establish during his childhood, an understanding that knowledge should serve humanity's well-being, that discovery should be shared rather than hoarded, and that intelligence without compassion was ultimately destructive. His research into evolutionary biology and adaptation was motivated not by personal ambition, but by genuine curiosity about the processes that had transformed his own life, and by desire to help other creatures who might be struggling with questions of identity and belonging. Darwin's eventual work with educational institutions focused on creating inclusive environments where students from diverse backgrounds could thrive academically while maintaining their cultural identities and personal values. His advocacy for individualized learning approaches and his emphasis on emotional intelligence, alongside academic achievement, reflected Richard's understanding that true education addressed the whole person rather than simply transferring information or training students to perform well on standardized assessments. The family that Darwin created was characterized by the same unconditional acceptance and celebration of differences that had marked his own childhood experience. His parenting philosophy emphasized curiosity over judgment, exploration over conformity, and the importance of creating safe spaces where children could experiment with different aspects of their identities without fear of rejection or criticism. Anais' exceptional intelligence might have led her toward academic achievement at the expense of emotional development, if not for Richard's consistent emphasis on the importance of maintaining connections to family, community, and personal values regardless of intellectual accomplishments. Her decision to pursue research in child psychology and education reflected her understanding that cognitive ability was meaningless without wisdom, empathy, and commitment to using one's gifts in service of others' well-being. The groundbreaking work that Anais conducted in understanding how children learn and develop was deeply influenced by her observations of Richard's intuitive parenting methods and their effectiveness in nurturing confidence, creativity, and emotional resilience. Her research validated many of the approaches that Richard had discovered through trial and error, providing scientific support for parenting philosophies that prioritized relationship over achievement and emotional intelligence over academic performance. The educational reforms that Anais championed throughout her career were designed to create school environments that honored individual differences, celebrated diverse forms of intelligence, and recognized that children's emotional and social development was just as important as their cognitive growth. Her influence on teacher training programs helped prepare educators who understood that their role extended beyond curriculum delivery to encompass mentorship, emotional support, and helping students discover their own unique strengths and interests. Anais' approach to her own eventual family reflected Richard's example of how intellectual achievement could coexist with warmth, playfulness, and deep emotional connection. Her ability to engage with her children's questions and interests at appropriate developmental levels, while maintaining the kind of loving relationship that encouraged them to share their thoughts and concerns, demonstrated that academic success and family closeness were not competing priorities, but rather complementary aspects of a well-lived life. The ripple effects of Richard's parenting philosophy extended far beyond his immediate family through the countless individuals who encountered Gumball, Darwin, and Anais throughout their lives, and were influenced by their example of how to treat others with kindness, respect, and genuine interest. The teachers who worked with Richard's children learned new approaches to classroom management and student engagement by observing how these young people responded to different educational strategies and interpersonal dynamics. The friends and classmates who spent time in the Watterson household during the children's growing years were exposed to family dynamics that challenged conventional assumptions about parental authority, sibling relationships, and the balance between structure and freedom in healthy family life. Many of these young people carried Richard's influence into their own adult relationships and parenting decisions, creating expanding circles of families who prioritized emotional connection over material success and authentic expression over social conformity. The neighbors and community members who had initially criticized Richard's unconventional approach to life gradually recognized the effectiveness of his methods as they observed the positive outcomes in his children's development and the stability of his family relationships. The shift in community perception from skepticism to admiration reflected broader cultural changes in understanding about what children needed from their families and what constituted genuine success in life. The informal mentoring that Richard provided to other parents in his community created networks of support and shared wisdom that strengthened multiple families' abilities to navigate the challenges of raising children in an increasingly complex and demanding world. His willingness to share his experiences and insights without judgment or pretension helped other parents develop confidence in their own instincts and abilities, while providing practical strategies for addressing common family challenges. The community garden that Richard helped establish in their neighborhood became a gathering place where families from diverse backgrounds could work together, share resources, and build relationships that transcended economic and cultural differences. His vision of community as an extended family, where everyone looked out for each other's well-being, created social connections that provided support during difficult times and enhanced everyone's quality of life during peaceful periods. The volunteer work that Richard undertook throughout his life reflected his understanding that individual family happiness was connected to broader community well-being, that children learned important values through observing their parents' service to others, and that everyone had gifts and capabilities that could contribute to solving social problems and meeting human needs. His work with local food banks and homeless shelters was characterized by the same genuine care and respect for human dignity that marked all his relationships. His ability to connect with people from all walks of life, to listen without judgment to their stories and struggles, and to provide practical assistance without condescension or pity, demonstrated that his approach to family relationships was part of a larger philosophy about how human beings should treat each other. The educational workshops that Richard eventually began offering to other parents were always free of charge and focused on practical strategies for building strong family relationships rather than theoretical discussions of child development. His teaching style was conversational and interactive, encouraging participants to share their own experiences and learn from each other while providing gentle guidance based on his years of hands-on parenting experience. The book that Richard finally agreed to write about his parenting philosophy was published by a small press and never achieved widespread commercial success, but it found devoted readers among parents who were searching for alternatives to conventional wisdom about child rearing and family relationships. The simple, honest tone of his writing and his focus on love and acceptance rather than control and achievement resonated with families who felt overwhelmed by expert advice and competitive parenting cultures. The speaking engagements that occasionally took Richard away from his family were always brief and focused on communities that specifically requested his insights into creating supportive family environments. His reluctance to travel extensively or promote himself as a parenting expert reflected his understanding that his own family remained his primary responsibility and that the most important teaching happened through daily example rather than public presentations. The research collaborations that developed between Richard and various academic institutions were informal partnerships where his experiential knowledge complemented scholarly studies of family dynamics and child development. His contributions to these projects were always credited appropriately, though he never sought academic recognition or professional advancement through these relationships. The influence of Richard's approach to masculinity and fatherhood created new models for how men could express strength through gentleness, leadership through service, and success through relationship building rather than competition and dominance. The young fathers who observed his example learned that nurturing children was not women's work, but rather one of the most important contributions that any person could make to society's well-being. The cultural shift that Richard's life represented was part of a larger movement toward recognizing that traditional definitions of success and achievement were often inadequate measures of human fulfillment and social contribution. His demonstration that a life focused on family relationships and community service could be deeply satisfying and socially valuable challenged assumptions about career advancement, financial accumulation, and public recognition as the primary goals of adult life. The environmental consciousness that Richard modeled through his creative reuse of materials, his emphasis on experiences over possessions, and his appreciation for simple pleasures influenced his children's understanding of sustainable living and their lifelong commitment to protecting natural resources for future generations. His gardening projects taught them about the connections between human well-being and environmental health, while providing practical skills and philosophical understanding about humanity's relationship with the natural world. The artistic legacy that Richard created through his music, visual art, and storytelling provided his children with examples of how creative expression could enrich daily life without requiring professional training or commercial success. His demonstration that everyone possessed creative capabilities that could bring beauty and meaning to ordinary experiences encouraged his children to maintain their own artistic interests and to support creative expression in others. Throughout their lives, the spiritual dimension of Richard's influence was not tied to any specific religious tradition, but rather reflected his deep appreciation for the mystery and wonder of existence, his gratitude for the gifts of family and community, and his understanding that love was the most powerful force in human experience. His children carried forward this sense of reverence and thankfulness while developing their own approaches to questions about meaning, purpose, and humanity's place in the larger cosmos. The economic philosophy that Richard lived by demonstrated that financial security could be achieved through careful management of resources, creative problem-solving, and community cooperation, rather than through endless accumulation of wealth or status symbols. His children learned to distinguish between needs and wants, to find satisfaction in simple pleasures, and to measure prosperity in terms of relationships and experiences rather than possessions and bank balances. As Richard entered his later years and began to see his grandchildren benefit from the same loving acceptance and creative nurturing that had characterized his own parenting, he could observe with quiet satisfaction that the values and approaches he had championed were continuing to influence new generations. The family traditions that had begun in their small apartment had evolved and adapted but maintained their essential focus on connection, celebration, and mutual support. The pink rabbit, who had once found contentment in simple pleasures, had discovered that his greatest achievement was not any individual accomplishment, but rather the creation of ripples of love and wisdom that would continue spreading outward long after his own life had ended. His legacy lived not in monuments or institutions, but in the character and choices of countless individuals who had been touched by his example of how to live with authenticity, compassion, and unwavering commitment to what truly mattered in the brief and precious span of human existence. And so our journey through the remarkable life of Richard Watterson comes to its peaceful conclusion, like the gentle settling of a satisfied sigh after a perfect meal shared with loved ones. We have witnessed not the rise and fall of kingdoms, but something far more precious, the daily triumph of love over expectation, of authenticity over achievement, of joy over judgment. Richard stands in his living room, surrounded by the chaos and beauty of family life, his laugh echoing through a home where every imperfection has been transformed into something magical through acceptance and love. He may never conquer kingdoms or command armies, but he has achieved something far greater. He has created a space where everyone can be exactly who they are. The pink rabbit, who once found wonder in ceiling shadows, has discovered that the greatest wonder of all was sharing life with people who understood and cherished him exactly as he was, while inspiring him to become the best possible version of himself, not through pressure or criticism, but through love and acceptance, and the simple example of their own courage and determination. His legacy flows through every hug he has given, every bedtime story he has told, Every moment of crisis where he remained calm and strong, every ordinary day, he transformed into something special through his presence and attention. The children who grew up in his household carry forward lessons that cannot be taught in schools, that happiness is a choice available in every moment, that love multiplies when shared, and that the most important achievements are measured not in trophies or bank accounts, but in the quality of relationships and the positive impact one has on others' lives. The neighbors who once criticized his unconventional approach have learned to appreciate the wisdom that guided his choices, watching as his children grew into confident, compassionate adults who treat everyone with dignity and respect. The community he helped build through countless small acts of kindness and service continues to flourish, creating networks of support and mutual care that strengthen every family within its embrace. His influence ripples outward through time in ways that defy easy measurement, in the teachers who learned new approaches to education by working with his children, in the parents who found courage to trust their own instincts after witnessing his example, in the young people who grew up believing that they were valuable and worthy of love, exactly as they were. Richard's revolution was quiet but profound, challenging everything society teaches about success and achievement, by demonstrating that the highest form of heroism is creating environments where others can flourish. His strength was expressed through gentleness, his leadership through service, his wisdom through the patient understanding that every person possesses unique gifts that deserve recognition and celebration. The simple apartment that once seemed too small for their growing family has become a symbol of how love can transform any space into something sacred and meaningful. The modest income that others viewed as limitation has proven that wealth is measured not in possessions but in relationships, not in accumulation but in appreciation, not in what one owns but in what one gives. As you drift towards sleep, let yourself imagine not grand adventures but simple moments of connection. Picture Richard's contentment as he watches his family, his quiet satisfaction in choosing love over ambition, his revolutionary understanding that happiness is not something to be achieved but something to be lived. Dream of Sunday morning pancakes, shaped like cartoon characters, of bedtime stories that transport listeners to worlds limited only by imagination, of laughter that echoes through rooms where acceptance and authenticity have taken root and flourished. Rest now in the knowledge that heroism comes in many forms, that wisdom can wear the face of simplicity, and that the greatest adventures often happen right at home. The most important battles are fought not with swords but with patience, not with force but with understanding, not with conquest but with love that refuses to give up on anyone. Ever. The legend continues in every parent who chooses presence over productivity, in every family that prioritizes relationships over recognition, in every person who has the courage to be authentically themselves in a world that constantly demands conformity. Richard Watterson's story is written not in history books but in hearts, not in monuments but in memories, not in achievements that fade but in love that endures across generations. Close your eyes and feel the gentle strength that comes from knowing that ordinary people can live extraordinary lives through the simple, revolutionary act of loving completely and without condition. The pink rabbit sleeps peacefully now, surrounded by the family he has nurtured and protected, his dreams filled with tomorrow's possibilities for creating more moments of magic in the beautiful, imperfect, perfectly wonderful adventure of everyday life.